Hey, we're live. Good morning, YouTube. We got another Cirucci team brief here, July 8th, 2019. We got Johnny and George with me here again today, and this brief was called just because of the news that just dropped 36 hours ago with Jeffrey Epstein being arrested, the powerful papal court Jew hedge fund manager based out of Miami. And I'll let Johnny jump in here because Johnny's been digging through all sorts of research, finding fantastic stuff on Jeffrey Epstein. From just to give my quick synopsis, I think what the case has happened. Like there's been so many victims. Like you're talking over 50 victims here, and I think in the initial plea agreement that he was given by Acosta generated a ton of outrage, like everywhere. Like people like like mainstream publications like the Miami Herald, for instance, were calling for Acosta to step down. So I think what they're doing now is they realize that this looks really bad, the softball plea that they gave Epstein. So I think Plan B is to nail Epstein as like the classic fall guy middleman, and the fact that he is a Jew is just perfect convenience for them. I think.
Yeah, he was obviously, to me, Eric, he was recruited from the very beginning for just that purpose, to be an expendable fall guy Jew. Some of the information coming out is that he was recruited by Leslie Wexler, and I think he's the papal court Jew behind Victoria's Secret. What a surprise! So you have one of the most lascivious, I think that's the word I'm looking for, companies. I mean, softcore porn. I mean, people, men, undisciplined men, subscribe to the Victoria's Secret catalog just for the pornographic nature of the pictures and nothing to do with the products. And I believe it was, I'll verify that, Leslie Wexler is the Jew front man for that, who supposedly recruited. I've got other information that I will bring up. He was plucked from him. He was a nobody. He was a high school teacher. And I suspect that he may have been put on their radar because he was a pervert, deviant high school teacher. So he checked the boxes for them, a pervert and a Jew. So let's go ahead and elevate him as an expendable middleman. We'll let him bring in sex traffic kids for decades. And when it's time, we'll kick him to the curb and we'll give ourselves some breathing room. And I think that's exactly. Go ahead, George.
Oh, sorry for Oh, by the way, good morning, Eric. Good morning, Johnny, and to all of our listeners out there or future listeners. Well, this sounds very Jack Ruby-esque. I mean, Jacob Rubenstein. He ran a strip club in Dallas. So you could say you could say that Ruby was very Wexler-esque. Now, granted, he didn't run Victoria's Secrets, but he was in a similar field. So the cover story, well, since he loved JFK so much, he was so distraught that Lee Harvey Oswald killed him, or allegedly killed him, he had to eliminate Lee Harvey Oswald. And he said, well, so Ruby was the perfect patsy. They probably had him in their back pocket just for a scenario just like this.
Yeah, it's the same principle at work. I mean, Epstein, who covered this, Johnny? Was it Fox? He even had a picture of one of the popes in his house where he.
Yeah, I've got that.
Raping all the kids.
I will.
They didn't name the pope though, if I'm correct, right? They left it unnamed.
Yes, correct. Yes. It's Leslie Wexner, not Wexler. It's Wexner. Is the puppet Jew, and one of the companies that he runs is Victoria's Secret.
Actually, speaking of Wexler, it would be important to look, because you found just brilliantly, like Epstein, he was connected to the Jesuit hierarchy via, also through the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations.
Oh yeah.
So I wonder this Wexler doubtlessly is plugged in somehow. And people don't know the Trilateral Commission was literally one of the official co-founders was Jesuit trained at Loyola High School, Zabrenu Al Qaeda Brzezinski, for instance.
Father of Mika.
Yes,
Yeah,
the current star pundit on MSNBC, the quote star pundit.
And personal friend of Karol Wojtyla, a.k.a. Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, outstanding. I'm going to pull those up real quick. I'm trying to manage one of the beds. I apologize for my sound quality. It's not as good as the mic that I have on my PC. But by going off of my NSA listening device, I'm able to juggle more files. I don't know how Eric does it, how he streams and then opens up 25 tabs. My computer would crash after 4. But God bless you. Okay, so
I got a cheap computer too. I'm surprised that.
That's how that works, man. Murphy's Law. Let me see. I'm scrolling through something from. Is this New York Magazine talking about Epstein? I'll put Wexler. And I'm trying to find the banks. They pulled him into some banks. I think Bear Stearns was one of them. I'm scrolling through this article, so be patient here. I think this is it. I'll go ahead and post this in the chat, the New York Mag, and then I'll find out the details. But you know what? I'll back up. Get rid of Wexner here. Let's see here. Hey, Jeremy, Doug, good to see you. Okay, here's that New York Mag article. Now, let me start off with the New York Slimes because, boy, this is, the Slimes, the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost are just the best outlets for the Catholic Intelligence Agency. This is planned from the beginning, folks. Planned from the beginning.
Well, the current CEO and chairman of the New York Times, Jesuit trained at Stonyhurst, Mark Thompson.
Oh, that's weird. Why would they use someone that is Jesuit trained and almost certainly a Roman Catholic when the New York Times is run by the Jewish Sulzberger family? That's weird how they would rely. Meanwhile, I've highlighted the two quote unquote journalists, air quotes here. Patricia Mazzi, Mazzei, I'm guessing Italian Roman Catholic, and Willie K. Rashbaum, I'm guessing Jewish. So you've got the combo here, the Italian Roman Catholic and the Jew, the so-called journalist. So we start from the very first sentence is psyop and spin. Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire, New York financier, long accused of molesting dozens of girls. Pause. Wrong. Long accused of trafficking hundreds of children to the rich and shameless, as well as being a pedo perv pig himself. But far more important and far worse of a crime is the trafficking. Not the fact that he was a perv and a pedo himself, which is equally very heinous crime, but far more important is the fact that this pig flies the rich and shameless to his island where they can rape children at will. That's the most important thing. You don't lead with that, how he's a perv, unless you're trying to cover it up. Arrested Saturday on charge with, so one of the charges supposedly is sex trafficking. An extraordinary turn of events, the Slimes. Did I add this, guys? By the way, I'm going to put this in the chat. If anybody needs this, I apologize. Don't jump on there because the New York Slimes requires you to subscribe. If you need this article, send me an email, johnny@johnnycirucci.com, and I will copy and paste to you this article so that you don't have to waste your 4 free views on the New York Slimes. He's expected to appear before a federal magistrate more than a decade after he gained notoriety with lurid accusations that he paid tons of girls for sexual massages. Is that it? Was it that he paid girls for massages, or was that he was trafficking children and that he was suckering in homeless kids and exploiting and raping and violating them? I think that would have been the more serious crime. Epstein 66, blah, blah, blah. Oh, 66. I'm sure there's nothing behind that. The age of his arrest, his age at his arrest. Widely criticized plea deal whose lenient terms continue to roil the Justice Department. Facing new scrutiny in the quote Me Too era. Hashtag Me Too era. All right, pause. So I guess we can go ahead and stop right here in this New York Slimes article and get into this, although I'll get into some more details on, first of all, Renee, it's our Alexander Acosta, Renee Alexander Acosta, who was an absolute nobody until he was turned in, he was granted federal prosecutor down there in Florida, who cut this piece of crap, an incredible, I mean, the deal itself was criminal. We'll get into the details if we can through our stream here. The prosecutors worked hand in hand with the defense attorneys. That included Jew Alan Dershowitz and Monica Lewinsky, special prosecutor Ken Starr. They worked together.
The Miami Herald, actually, I'll link this in the description. The Miami Herald actually has an article where they quote Acosta writing to Ken Starr saying thanks, we had a very productive meeting.
High five. They got this guy nothing. First of all, the frauds at the Federal Bureau of Catholic Criminal Instigation came in, interviewed. They purposefully, if they interviewed a victim at all, they purposefully kept the victim in the dark. It's by law, they're supposed to keep the victims abreast of the progression of the investigation. They violated the law and did not let any of the victims know that they cut this incredible deal. So everybody involved should be in jail. Judges, prosecutors, cops, well, not necessarily cops, but judges and prosecutors, jail. Acosta should not have been promoted. He should be in an orange jumpsuit.
Well, Acosta, he was recently speaking at the Catholic University of America. So is that like a symbolic of like his promotion?
Yeah, he's a big hero. That's a good promotion. He was a nobody federal prosecutor. Guess what else I found out? One of the reasons why he was promoted. Now, we have this. We got into this a while before. Andrew Puzder of Carl Jr.'s, the pig. Oh my goodness! I'm just realizing this. Was the Roman Catholic pig behind Carl Jr.'s, who packaged his millions of calories of poison with porn, literal softcore porn. If you've ever seen a Carl Jr.'s, or I think a Hardee's as well, commercial, they have actually had porn actresses. They've had Hugh Hefner in on a Carl Jr. commercial. I'm pretty sure they have. An absolute pig, the perfect Catholic. The perfect Catholic. Go say 4 million Hail Marys on his rosary there, his prayer beads, and then turn around and be an unbelievable pig. There was too much heat for Puzder to be Trump's Secretary of Labor. So he stepped aside, and good old Alexander Acosta was a shoo-in. A shoo-in after what a criminal piece of crap that he was. You know what I found out? You know what the Secretary of Labor oversees? Sex trafficking child laws. That's
the most sinister part of this. Yeah, Costa is like the highest lawmaker in the land when it comes to sex.
They picked this pig. They picked this pig, this cover-up pig, to be the guy who oversees the United States government enforcing laws on child sex trafficking. Are you friggin' kidding me? And Andrew Puzder was the first choice. Puzder. That's why this pig is Secretary of Labor. Because he gets to oversee and do the same thing. Keep going. He's proved he was a unbeatable gatekeeper for the pedos.
Was Pudster a Knight of Malta, the Carl's Jr.? I know he was a devout Catholic.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think he was on the board of Thomas Aquinas University or something like that. And he had to step down because he's such a pig. Another one. Unbelievable.
Excuse me, fellas. Johnny. Okay. You mentioned there's a whole bunch of information unpacked from the last few minutes. You mentioned Ken Starr. I've been trying to track with you. He was involved with the prosecution of Epstein. He helped broker the deal for Jeffrey.
He's one of Epstein's defense attorneys.
Okay.
He was one of the few non-Jew defense attorneys for Epstein.
And going back to Lewinsky, he was on offense against Jesuit trained Bill Clinton, who had his Jesuit trained lawyer Bill Bennett defending him.
Okay. Good for you. And the brother of that other turd Bennett. Bill Bennett was the Secretary of Education. And George, before you finish your point, Bill Bennett was a Reagan Secretary of Education, right? The devout Roman Catholic. And don't forget. George, don't forget the whole purpose of the Lewinsky psyop was to do a fast, a card trick, a card trick distraction. What Clinton should have been on trial for was high treason, taking bribes from communist China and hooking them up with supercomputers and technology. And instead, they fabricated this Monica Lewinsky. Bravo Juliet's underneath the desk there, that's what you impeach this clown for. So Ken Starr was part of that Jesuit theater. So George, go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, Ken Starr was not only part of that, but one of his proteges was a young Brett Kavanaugh, because one of Kavanaugh's first jobs after law school was he worked for the U.S. solicitors. He was like Kavanaugh was like assistant or deputy solicitor general, and he Starr basically showed Kavanaugh the ropes. Yes, Supreme Court. I'm talking about the current Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, Jesuit trained Brett Kavanaugh also at Georgetown Prep, and he's also said that what happens at Georgetown Prep stays at Georgetown Prep, and that's been very beneficial. He said after that too that's been very beneficial for us.
Fellow alumnus with the Protestant, the only Protestant on the Supreme Court, quote unquote, Neil Gorsuch, also Jesuit trained at Georgetown Prep, but he's a good Protestant. He's a good Episcopal Protestant. Episcopals, which is basically Catholic light, from the same diocese as the Ramsey family, who gave up their little girl, Jean-Benet Ramsey, to the pedos. That's just a coincidence. So back to this arrest and this New York Slimes piece. The Me Too era, you're going to see a lot of that. Before Me Too, there was Jeffrey Epstein. Me Too is a complete psyop. The purpose of this is to spin this. You have a systemic child sex trafficking ring. At the top of the ring is the Vatican. And beneath the Vatican are governments. And running from the tip of the spear of these governments are all the agencies and organizations that you think are supposed to be helping you, protect you from criminal behavior. From cops to prosecutors to friggin' intelligence agencies, FBI, CIA, sheriff's departments, police, prosecutors, judges, all intimately involved and doing the trafficking. Pulling this Me Too crap with their clowns to spin it as sexism so they can get two more demographics fighting each other stupidly out of emotion, men versus women. Oh, it's these chauvinist men pigs like Harvey Weinstein. What happened to Harvey Weinstein? Nothing.
Well, I was going to say with Weinstein too, and they always get like a Jew middleman to blame everything on. And with Weinstein, you can see photos with him, the Jesuit priest Leo O'Donovan, S.J. This Jesuit priest was on the board of directors at Disney, the child television agency Disney. And we know Disney. There's been books written on like the sexual innuendos in Disney shows. But this Leo O'Donovan is on the board of Disney. You can literally see a photo of him like putting his arm around Harvey Weinstein at like a banquet dinner. or something like this. And this is the same Jesuit. Like while he was in charge of Georgetown, he invited the porn legend Larry Flint to Georgetown.
Good for you. Good for you. Leo O'Donovan, right? O'Donovan.
Yes, it's the O'Donovan. Yes, and then while just to tap it off with Donovan, while he was on the board of Disney, he was on the board of the Riggs National Bank, which was laundering millions of dollars for Saudi Arabia, and they were laundering millions of dollars for the devout Roman Catholic dictator Augusto Pinochet.
That reminds me of Teddy Hesburgh. Here you got Teddy, SR-71 Teddy, who's representing the United States government for the UN. He's on the Civil Rights Commission. Teddy Hesburgh also managed a bank. I think Teddy Hesburgh managed a Chase Bank. Are you kidding me? What do you get these priests managing banks for? Well, you know why. Laundering money.
Oh, absolutely. Recently, there was Chris Lowney, S.J., a Jesuit. He was one of the highest officials at J.P. Morgan Bank for for 18 years. A fully ordained Jesuit priest. And even wrote a book on it. It's called Chris Lowney. It's called like Heroic Leadership or something like that. It's his autobiography. He even compares the Jesuits to J.P. Morgan in chapter 1. For instance, it's unbelievable. But I just, ties back to Epstein. I think that case with O'Donovan and Weinstein shows that that's like the blueprint. Like there's the papists are always hiding behind the front, the Jew frontman. And actually, you mentioned this in. I don't have I can pull up my copy here. Just that you mentioned there's Eaters of Children. There was a Catholic priest who was the U.S. delegation to the UN on like matters of human trafficking.
It was the Robert Hupp, who was running Boys Town.
Yeah, the Boys Town priest of all people. Yeah, Huff. Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah, so that's a joke.
Who was running Boys Town was the United States representative to the UN for matters of child safety. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? That's like that other pig, that female pig that brought those Baptists down. Oh my goodness, to help the relief, the earthquake relief down there, and oh my goodness, it'll all come back to me in a minute.
Are you talking about Haiti, Johnny?
In the 90s, the Haiti, good for you, George. Thank you. Yeah. That female who was actually, she's a friend of Hillary Clinton. On let's see here.
Not Kathy Griffith.
Yeah, Silsby, right? Laura Silsby.
Silsby. I haven't heard the name.
Yes. Silsby. Okay, she was given a position in the what's the child kidnapping alert? There's a company.
Oh, is it New Life Child's Refugee case? Is that the?
Yeah, that's the case. That's the case where Willie Clinton went down to Haiti to pull her out of jail personally. A bunch of Baptists in there as cover, and was bringing out Haitian children as part of the U.S. relief effort, kidnapping them, paying their families off. He was on the board of the company contracted by the United States government for that gives the alerts for a child when a child goes missing.
Amber Alert?
Amber, good for you, George. She was on the board of the company that does. Are you freaking kidding me? This pig who was down there, who was a front woman for kidnapping kids. And
he was given the pardon by Bill Clinton.
Yeah, well, Bill Clinton personally intervened, went down to Haiti for her because he was off the radar. Hillary was Secretary of State at the time.
And, this all ties in because Bill Clinton comes up with the Jeffrey Epstein case again.
And there he is. There's Jeffrey Epstein's good pal, Willie Clinton. And by the way, before we leave the brilliance metaphor that you left, that you talked about, Eric, Leo O'Donovan, the collared Jesuit priest that we should be talking about. Instead, we're talking about Epstein. What do they do? I'm the only one that I have seen in print bringing this up. Why is it? Now you look this up, and the examples of actual porn being insinuated into Disney movies, pictures of genitalia, of really obvious genitalia popping up, and your little toddler's seeing this crap in the middle of Aladdin. I think there's one in Aladdin. Unbelievable. There's one in Lion King. I think it's written out, sex, something like that. It's written in a cloud in Lion King. Are you kidding me? So what they claim is the psyop is it's just a cartoonist that was pissed off or playing a practical joke. Why are there so many examples? The reason is that they are grooming your children. Thousands upon thousands, maybe millions of kids are seeing these, and they're getting these images of genitalia flashed into their brains subconsciously. It's so fast. Well, I'm the only one making the point that the purpose is to groom your child to be thinking about sex, to be a future victim or a future predator. No one brings that point up.
Johnny.
Yeah, George.
Okay, excuse me for interrupting yet again. I'm sorry for being so rude. Well, this goes back. You're talking about films that came out in the 1990s, like Aladdin, Little Mermaid, so forth. But this actually goes back to almost the very beginning of Disney, back in the 1930s and 40s. They were doing subliminal messages back then.
Oh, George, you know you remind me of? Bill Clinton, Walt Disney, both little Demolay boys.
Yes. Same thing with well, boy, you mentioned this in one of your books.
One of the biggest financiers of Disney was the Knight of Malta, A.P. Giannini, Bank of America.
Oh, Mr. Bank of Italy, later Bank of America. Go ahead, George. Finish your thought.
Okay, well, but you're talking about the settlement messages, putting out phallic symbols or things like that, that are just there for literally a second. But if you look about the popular Disney films of the 1990s, like The Little Mermaid, or okay, I'm not up, but if you look at how these characters are dressed, the female characters, they're not even 10 years old. They're basically half naked.
Overtly so. Overtly so. Little Mermaid is scandally produced. Scandally produced.
And of course, I mentioned this to you early at the beginning of the show. You're talking about Jeff Epstein, how he's basically they had him waging the wings a long time ago, so he can take the fall if anything should ever go down. Well, and I mentioned Jack Ruby, nee Jacob Rubenstein. As I said, I'm not sure if we're on the air yet. He ran a strip club in Dallas.
Yeah, great connection. Great connection of another fall guy Jew who also is reputed to have been homosexual. So he runs a strip club, he's a homosexual, and he's a Jew. Boy, you can't hit anymore. The entire crew, Clay Shaw, a sexual deviant. David Ferry, a sexual deviant.
David was it Ferry? He was going to be I think Phelps was the source for this. Phelps accused him of being like an incognito Jesuit, but Ferry did go to like 3 Jesuit schools, and it's even on his wiki it said he was going to enter the priesthood.
Yes,
this guy is one of the most there's a photo of Oswald with him. And I just mentioned that after this event took place, people see my video. I covered how there were 6 consecutive mayors of New Orleans from like 1968 to 2008 were all papists, Jesuit trained.
Fantastic report. Owned by the Catholic Church. Ferry groomed Oswald. Ferry knew Oswald for years. Ferry knew Oswald when he was a teenager, and they were in the Civil Air Patrol. Ferry was running the Civil Air Patrol in that area. And I'm sure that he abused Oswald. And so they created this poor guy. They effed up his mind from the beginning. They pulled him out of the Marine Corps and they immersed him in this crap. And then they sacrificed him. When Oswald, as far as Oswald being, I call Oswald confused, not a sexual deviant. I call that poor guy confused. He was messed up. I think his marriage to Marina was sincere, but he was too effed up in the head to make it work. And they did it to him. They victimized that guy from the very beginning.
Well, he was perfect. He had a cousin who was, I'm pretty sure he had a cousin who was studying to be a Jesuit priest at the time, Lee Murrett. So I'm sure the Jesuits liked that. That probably made it easier for him to be manipulated. I got
a picture of David Ferrie in his collar when he was going through seminary. I won't go as far as to say that he made it through. I think what they say that he did not finish to become a priest. I'm probably with that. I think that's another typical Eric Phelps exaggeration, needlessly discrediting himself with exaggeration. I'm more than satisfied to say that David Ferrie was double, I think maybe even triple dipped, had been to at least 2 separate Jesuit schools and was trying to be a priest himself. And one of the psyops from the Stone movie, JFK, was that they found out that he was homosexual, and it was that, boy, they put the kibosh on me. Are you kidding me? They recruit homosexuals. Homosexuals flock to the priesthood. That's not the reason why he didn't finish. I don't know what the reason he didn't finish is, but that's not the reason. They probably looked at how screwed up he was and, you know what? We got a better idea for you. We're going to put you right into Catholics in action.
Well, the thing is about Ferrie is he flunked Latin class.
Yeah. So I'm looking up real quick. I want to go back to the Slimes article, and I'm also want to pull up that Fox News article that mentions that on the one time that they raided Epstein's complex there, they found him with a picture with his arm around a pope, an unnamed pope. For some reason, Fox News didn't think it was necessary. I'll pull that link up too, but I'll go back to the Slimes real quick.
Well, because Fox News works for the Pope. Rupert Murdoch's a papal knight, and he said that News Corp is just like the Jesuits.
That's weird because he's supposedly not a Catholic himself, and yet he's got 2 papal knighthoods.
Yeah, his wife's a papal dame.
That's just like Bob Hope, who was supposedly not a Catholic. But then again,
wasn't there Bob Hope? Where was the accusation? Was this Kathy Bryan who said Bob Hope was a deviant?
No, it's Sue Ford is her real name. Bryce Taylor is her pen name. Bryce Taylor. Thanks for the memories. It's her book.
Oh, it was Bryce Taylor. Okay, I just want to mention with Bob Hope, if he was also a knight of Saint Sylvester on top of being a knight of Saint Gregory. So what's this comedian doing, being knighted by 2 like elite aristocratic, Vatican knights? Immersed
in Roman Catholicism from start to finish because he was an asset. He was an intelligence asset, supposedly working intelligence while he was with the USO. They used that as a cover. Oh, a comedian, an entertainer. He's flying from country to country. He's flying from battlefield to battlefield. He's actually working for the CIA. All a bunch of bull. And they give him a mind-controlled teenage girl sex slave as part of the perk, the pig that he was. And you're right, George. His wife was a hyper-devout Roman Catholic. And he himself, they actually admitted that he converted before death. I'm sure he was a Catholic long before that. But George, finish on Hope. We're going to get back to Epstein.
Okay, well, Bob Hope was an Episcopalian. And for those, I realize that we have an international audience. That's basically the American version of the Anglican Church. Although you do have something called the American Anglican Church, but that's another conversation altogether. Okay, Bob Hope, I guess in the 1940s and 50s, did a number of films with Bing Crosby, who was a devout Roman Catholic. He went to Gonzaga Prep himself. So Hope's wife was Catholic.
What was the first name of that Crosby, Jordan?
Bing Crosby, a very famous, they call him crooner. very famous singer,
Yeah.
like the generation just before the Sinatra generation.
Yes,
They
and so
did a bunch of movies together. On the road to whatever, Bali, on the road to blah. They were very popular comedy movies of Bob Hope and Bing Crosby.
Well,
Bing
it
Crosby at
says
first,
Bing. You know, Bing Crosby's house is at the campus of Gonzaga.
hyper devout Catholic, hyper devout Roman Catholic.
And apparently, he went to Gonzaga Prep too. Oh, the great. I wasn't aware of this guy. Thanks for bringing him up.
Yeah,
well,
another weirdo who I've seen abuse his kids growing up. So anyway, so real quick back to Epstein and the New York Slimes. This New York Slimes piece there, widely criticized plea deal where Alexander Acosta worked hand in glove with Dershowitz and Starr and the Epstein, committing crimes, purposefully keeping the poor victims in the dark. All right, Slimes goes on. Before the plea deal, Epstein, a former hedge fund manager, former hedge fund manager, he was a friggin' nobody. He was a high school teacher before he was plucked from obscurity by a bunch of banker Jews, and behind the banker Jews were a bunch of papists. Plucked from obscurity. Oh, and then they fed him these millions and enabled him. He was perfect. Not only was he a pervert and a deviant, but he did what all of this is. This is why this works so well. Papal court Jews, I swear they're not read in. They just have to be themselves. The papist controller will go in and pick the most flawed Jew they could find, and they enable them. And out of guilt for their success, they feel like they're buying off their soul. They surround themselves and enable more Jews. And what does that do? Anybody that looks from the outside in, all they see is a Jew surrounded by Jews. Oh, it's the Jews rule the world. Legal. Starr was like the only non-Jew, the only, what do they call him, Goyim, the only non-Jew on his legal team. It's perfect.
Epstein, they always give back, though. You found this great source here, Johnny. Headline, I'll link this in the chat. Jeffrey Epstein, science activist, backs the largest Catholic organization in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Oh, I'll have to pull that up.
Jeffrey Epstein was giving Jeffrey Epstein, the Sixth Foundation has donated, quote, critical funds to the Catholic charities of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
If that link is still good, I'll put it in the chat. PR Newswire.
I'll see if you put the web.
I got some more. I dug some more on that this morning. Catholic charities. Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein Sticks Foundation. I don't know what the heck that is. That's satanic right there. Has donated critical funds to the Catholic charities of the Virgin Islands. Catholic charities of the Virgin Islands, and by the way, the Virgin Islands are the United States protectorate. This piece of shit is not even out of the jurisdiction of the United States law enforcement. They're all corrupt. Catholic Charities of the Virgin Islands is the largest Catholic organization in the Virgin Islands, providing essential support to the poor. Now listen to this right up. They provide support to children, to the homeless, to struggling families, to the mentally ill, to substance abusers. By the way, these are all demographics that have come up whom victims say, and that doesn't matter whether victims say that Epstein went after them. It's a patented sex trafficking technique to go after the vulnerable, the homeless, the orphans, the ones that aren't going to have family that want to cut your nuts off, you pig, for what you did. These are all the organizations that Catholic charities were supposedly helping in the Virgin Islands that the Epstein Sticks Foundation bankrolled. Now I found a blog. I'll put this and I'll send this to you guys. Catholic Insider, Catholic Islander News. Kids learn summer enrichment camp as part of the Catholic charities in the Virgin Islands for children ages 3 to 13 from low-income families. Camp Shriver for Catholic charities, the free sports camp for youth with development disabilities ages 8 to 15. Just prime targets. Prime targets. Health care for the homeless in St. Thomas, Catholic charities, Bethlehem House Shelter. Oh, this is even better. Catholic Charities produces promotional film. New York filmmaker Elliot Lowenstein decided that he was going to go and do a promotional film on Catholic. What the hell is this New York Jew helping Catholic Charities of the Virgin Islands for? Why would he do that? Jews rule the world. There's no need for him to help out Catholic Charities. Here, I'll put that blog in the chat for you guys.
Oh, very great. This is literally like you said. That's the exact word for word demographic of who Jeffrey Epstein targeted. He targeted homeless people, targeted poor people, women whose parents abused them, women with parents who are drug addicts. Essentially vulnerable people.
Go ahead, George.
Well, Johnny, I'm not sure how to disabuse you, but you obviously haven't watched enough E. Michael Jones videos. He'll or brother Nathaniel, they'll set you straight.
Yes. Good, brother Nathaniel. That piece of shit gets a paycheck from Catholics in Action every week.
Okay, so could I just mention something? It is tenuously on topic. I remember watching a documentary back in the 1990s on Jeffrey Dahmer, and his escapades in Milwaukee in the 1980s and early 1990s. And it came out during his trial, and the police released arrest reports that he targeted certain individuals. I guess he would go to bars or the street corners or things like that, and he would pick up teenagers or those young men like in the early 20s, and he would assess them. He'd find out, usually they're drug addicts, so they're drunkards, they're living on the streets, they're runaways. So for the most part, he was fairly certain that his victims wouldn't be missed.
Yeah, George, that's part of the PSYOP, is this idea of keeping families in fear and terror that loved children will be plucked up. Johnny Gosch, perfect example. I absolutely believe that Noreen Gosch was personally involved with the disappearance of her son. The archetypical supposed example of a kid being plucked up off the street by pedophiles. It almost never happens, George. Kids from a loving two-parent home are extremely low risk. Extremely low risk. It's broken families. I think it was Gagan, that piece of shit priest, pedophile priest Gagan. They would seek out the good Catholic divorced moms with 50 kids and her hands full, and her head is splitting because she didn't use any contraception. She's got 50 kids, and her pig Catholic husband took off, and now this Catholic priest shows up, wants to help out. And he goes in and reads them bedtime stories and reaches down their pants. I'm not exaggerating. This is what happens.
Well, and just with Gagan, it came up in the Pennsylvania the Pennsylvania report. What they do is that these priests, like in Pennsylvania, they would tell the kids, like while they were undressing them, they'd say, "Oh, it's okay. Like Jesus and the prophets, like all prayed naked too."
Satanic. They purposefully connect Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit and God to the abuse they're giving these kids. They sorry for a little detail. They sodomize little boys with their crucifixes. No exaggeration, folks. I apologize for that, but it happens. You need to know they are a plague. These are war crimes. These are war crimes. Thousands upon thousands of priests are being encouraged to come to the United States from other areas, from other countries, to rape kids and to be covered up, to be enabled by their own hierarchy and by the cops, judges, and prosecutors. It's a job to take these monsters and rein them in. But we're not going to have justice. They should be put to death. We won't have that. We won't have real justice.
Oh, we see the current system when you had the attorney in Pennsylvania, Jesuit-trained Josh Shapiro. He had redactions on like 60 pages of his report. It's still a report, but it shows how powerful or how powerless the civil authorities are to do
A
it.
brilliant report you did on this. I was re-listening to your report on this. The Jew Attorney General trained by the Jesuits to be a lawyer, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. What a joke. They waited until all the statutes of limitations were well up to have this blow up in the media, to admit that there are hundreds of kids in the Pittsburgh, is it the Pittsburgh Diocese? Hundreds of kids.
There's Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Scranton, Philadelphia.
And they waited and made absolutely sure that these pedophile, child raping scum were beyond the hand of the law before they allowed it to pop up into publicity. I was so upset. I immediately went online to back you up when you said 2 indictments, hundreds, 800 kids coming forward as having been raped by these pigs. This war crime. 800 at least, 2 indictments. And what's the actual sentence? They could get 3 to 5 years if they actually get convicted. Are you kidding me? All right, so real quick, back to the slimes and Epstein. Before the plea deal, Epstein, hedge fund manager, had been friendly with Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew. Friendly, really. So what exactly does that mean? What that means is that these 3 clowns it's been decided that these 3 clowns, Willie Clinton has been washed up. Trump, he's in office right now. So all that's going to do is stir people up. He's untouchable. And that other piece of crap, Prince Andrew. These are the fall guys. And that other Jew lawyer, Dershowitz, who's 80 years old and slobbering on himself.
Speaking on Dershowitz, like you brilliantly found this. The Opus Dei, Louis Freeh, actually did a private investigation against the victims of Guthrie, the late victim. She claimed that Dershowitz was part of the Epstein ring. And Louis Freeh, quoting from Daily Beast, Louis Freeh, I'm adding this, Opus Dei, the former head of FBI, also conducted an independent investigation of Guthrie's claims and published a statement noting, quote, "Our investigation found no evidence to support the accusations of sexual misconduct against Professor Dershowitz." And, this is the same guy that did he actually did the private investigation, or, he did the official investigation of the Penn State sex abuse.
Well, yes, that was when that came to the surface, the FBI and the cops all stepped back and they said, "Hey, Penn State, pedophile state, you guys police yourselves." And pedophile state said, "Well, okay, well, if you insist, we'll do our own investigation." Rather than the friggin' cops doing their friggin' job, they stepped back and said, "You know what? We trust you." Same thing with the Catholic Church. We trust the Catholic Church to police themselves. Who did they get? They got Opus Dei Louis to come in, the same piece of shit that was handled the Hansen, his Opus Dei buddy, Robert Philip Hansen, 20 years, high treason, handing intelligence to the Soviet Union. That was Louis Freeh, was the director during most of that time.
Yeah, Louis Freeh, he has a long list of treason. The Waco massacre is also on his list.
Oh, yes, good point. Excellent point. He's got to be an arch child rapist himself. For him to be the guy,
he found no other wrongdoings in the Paterno investigation. Joe Paterno, I found Paterno was actually educated by the Jesuits at Brooklyn Prep, and you found he was also an Opus Dei. So the Paterno is Opus Dei, like Freeh, the guy investigating him. He's investigated by the Jesuits. Paterno, turned a blind eye to that sex scandal for
one of the victims came up to him and said, "Coach, your coach, one of your coaches, Sandusky, abused me and is abusing other boys." And he told the victim, "I don't have time for that. I got football games to win. I got football games to coach. I don't have time for that. I don't care if you've been raped by a man on my staff. I don't have time for that." That's what Paterno said. Barking in hell.
And that's only a guy who was trained by the Jesuits and who is really read into Opus Dei could show that little compassion.
Good for you. That's because he was a deviant himself. Go ahead,
fellas. Okay, there again, I don't mean to keep throwing in all these collateral points, but I said this out probably a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. John Walsh, who was born in 1946, and he used to host a program on Fox called America's Most Wanted, and it was later called something else. Back in 1981, Walsh and his family were, I guess, at a mall in Florida, Hollywood, Florida, where they're shopping, and his son Adam was kidnapped and disappeared, and his body was found a short while later. I don't know the exact details. They never actually arrested the killer. They think the actual killer died in prison, so they say. Anyhow, why do I bring up John Walsh? He's Irish Roman Catholic. He grew up Catholic.
Hang on, George. Hang on, George. We got this piece of shit, this troll, this cunt troll in the chat, Eric. Disappear this cunt, Johnny Currency. Disappear this piece of shit.
Oh,
Making
Johnny,
comments about my family.
Okay, I'll let me see here. Move.
I'm not in the chat, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, I got him. I got his messages hidden at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry, George.
Has this guy been like following you around? I haven't seen this.
Yeah. He's cracked. He sits in the wings and waits to attack me. Cracked. Go ahead, George. Finish. I don't mean for that to be actually part of the record now. Go ahead, George. Finish your point.
Oh, okay. So you're like King Kong, and I guess he must be like Megatron.
Good for you.
Well, it comes with the territory. When you're putting out truthful videos, you're going to be
making comments about my family there in the chat. Really, you little cockroach. Really, go ahead, guys. Go ahead, George.
Okay, sorry about that little.
I apologize for my language. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, so John Walsh. So his son Adam was kidnapped from a mall in Hollywood, Florida, in 1981, and he was murdered. He was decapitated. Now Walsh, as far as I know, is still married, and he was happily, although he and his wife did separate. So anyhow, I bring him up for a number of reasons. You said that you talked about Johnny Gosh back in Nebraska. This is something that Walsh had mentioned before. He had known Donald Trump since the 1970s because Walsh made his money building luxury resorts in Florida and in the Caribbean. And so before Donald Trump even announced his presidential candidacy, Walsh mentioned, he said, "Oh yes, I've known Donald like over 40 years." So I'm not sure.
I'll give you. Hang on, I'll give you the exact quote. I've got that. I've got that in a different folder. I've got that in the Trump folder. Hold on.
Oh, is that the Trump quote on Epstein?
Yeah.
John.
Let's see here.
Yeah, something like he's a great guy. He likes women as much as I do.
Something that's a different quote.
Here it is. In fact, this one's from New York Mag, and I'll put that in the chat. Epstein likes to tell people that he's a loner, a man who's never touched alcohol or drugs, and one whose nightlife is far from energetic. And yet, if you talk to Donald Trump, a different Epstein emerges. Quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy," Trump booms from a speakerphone. Quote, "He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life." End quote. You pig. That's the president of the United States. Every Trumpette ought to stick your head in a toilet and flush until you can't breathe anymore.
Yeah, he's a Donald J. Trump, as you said, Donald Jesuit trained from Fordham Trump, and he was Epstein's neighbor in Palm Beach. They literally lived right beside each other.
Yeah, I will get you the name of the victim. That was one of the victims that has come out was actually taken off of his Mar-a-Lago resort. So that's apparently Mar-a-Lago was the boys' town for Epstein. Epstein would have people like his Ghislaine Maxwell, another puppet Jew, these pig women who are basically honeypots or honey traps for these kids because they're not as threatening as a pig like Epstein himself, as a man on the make. They use these women to go in. And as a matter of fact, I'll pull up some of these women in these articles. One of them is now wife of a NASCAR racer. She's made it big. She got everything she needed. Let's see here.
Well, there's some actually. You sent us on email. There's some really interesting names, that just come up to this whole scandal. Just like with Kurt Cobain's ex or girlfriend when
I
she
got the
was
names. You want me to do names? I'll do names. Hold on. I got the names. Let's see here. Some of the names. As a matter of fact, I also promised to give you. I will put the list of the Black Book in the chat. Is that right? No. Sorry, guys. I'll just give you this wrong. Here is the Black Book. Boom. DocumentCloud.org. There's Epstein's Black Book. A summary. Some of the names include Leslie Wexner, the Jew behind Victoria's Secret, former New Mexico Governor Bruce King, former New Mexico Governor and presidential hopeful Bill Richardson, Peter Soros, nephew of George Soros, Miss Sweden. They have these weird, deviant, pervert females involved in this shit. Ava Anderson Dubin, no hyphen. We've got Alec Baldwin, Ralph Fiennes, Griffin Dunn, New York Post gossip columnist Richard Johnson, Teddy Kennedy, David Koch, filmmaker Andrew Jarecki, Trump, of course, Courtney Love, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, Dershowitz, and that's just a smattering. These idiots at Gawker. The list I gave you guys, go through that list. You'll see other Tony Blair. I'm looking at it right now. You freaking kidding me?
Tony Blair?
Boy, Tony Blair. Michael Bloomberg, one right on top of the other, right there in the B's. Go through that list yourself, folks. It's still up. Tony Blair and Michael Bloomberg. How do you not put that there, Gawker, unless you're covering for these scum? All right, so there's some of the list. I'm rolling through it right now just to give you any. See, the Chris Brown. Let's see here. Roll through some more real quick.
Wasn't Jeff Trudeau also on it?
Who? Kevin Spacey was there.
Chris, actually, people haven't aware. Spacey had those allegations against him recently, and he gave a talk at Georgetown not too long ago. Also,
Spacey came out as being homosexual, and he was also probably groomed. One of the reasons why he's a well-known actor is because he was a child victim himself. But unfortunately for him, he just made the wrong decisions. Rather than addressing what happened to him, he allowed it to run and rule his life. And so now he turned himself into a predator. Same thing with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was preyed upon as a child and allowed it to force him to make the wrong decisions. He became a predator himself. Victims have choices. We've said this again and again. Victims have choices. A bunch of names. It just goes on and on and on, folks.
This is like a whole other sphere of living what these aristocrats do. For instance, like I have up on my screen here this Paul Rockefeller. I guess she's a current sixth generation Rockefeller family member, but she's a part of this aristocratic class. She's part of Rockefeller Capital Management, but she worked for the Marina Abramovich Institute. And Marina Abramovich, she's the spirit cooking.
And that's another Clinton connection too.
Yeah, so you have this Rockefeller on the working with the spirit cooker Marina Abramovich. This is Hall Rockefeller. I'll link this in the chat. It's just an example of what these elites are doing.
The Duke and the Duchess of York.
Lots of free time, and they do lots of stuff.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah. They got too much money. They don't know what to do with themselves, and they get into this deviant, satanic crap. And they also get into this evil stuff of raping and abusing kids. The Duke and Duchess of York are also in Epstein's book. George, you trying to jump in?
Okay, Johnny. Yeah. Yes, I mentioned this to you probably 2 years ago when I first started emailing you, and it's just something that fell through the cracks, with the hundreds of other emails I've sent to you. And over the weekend, I believe yesterday, I sent you and Eric a a YouTube video, an interview with British actor Tom Baker. Now, I know this may sound like a fluff piece. Now, I used to be, much to my chagrin, I was into Doctor Who, and I love Tom Baker's incarnation of the Doctor. He played him back in the 70s. Baker was born in 1934 in Liverpool. And he was actually, even though he was English, he was raised Irish Roman Catholic because his parents, or I guess his great grandparents, came over from Ireland in the mid 19th century, and they settled in Liverpool. Now, this is a trivial. This may sound like a really picky on point, but you have a major Irish enclave in Liverpool and in London. So, as I said. Baker's dad died when he was young. He was like 6 or 7, and so his mom has something like 8 or 9 children, and she was a devout Roman Catholic. And this is something Baker mentioned in his 2010 interview. And there's a couple of points here. She, go to mass at least once a week, and she prayed that God would save her soul from hell. And so she gave as much, even though they couldn't afford it, they gave basically as much money as they could to the Catholic Church to basically buy her way out of hell. So as part of the deal she made with God, Tom Baker says she made with God, was she would sacrifice her firstborn son, Tom, to the Catholic Church. So she had him sent away to a monastery when he was like 10 or something, with the hopes that he would actually be ordained a priest. Now he was the Jesuits, but I believe it was the Benedictines or somebody like that. But they were just as draconian as any other order. And Baker mentioned a couple of anecdotes about how austere his life was. They could only shower once a week. They had to wear linen. They had to wear wool underclothing, things like that, and they couldn't talk to people, look people directly in the face. They could only speak when spoken to. And his novice master, according to Baker, if he didn't know, he said, boy, he must have fled Nazi Germany because he was a complete tyrant. He would beat the boys for the most flimsiest reasons, for the most minor infractions. So by the time he became an adult, he decided to leave religious life, and he became an avowed atheist. So why do I bring this up? Now, Baker did not mention anything about sexual abuse, but you had to read between the line in the interview. So after that, he went into the service, he went to school, then he became an actor. So even though he had this horrible experience in this minor seminary, I think it could have served as a launching pad for his career.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, in different ways, that's what happened to Charles Manson. Also, his career as a CIA engineered, counterculture hippie was engineered when he went to Boys Town.
Well, okay. There's one other point regarding Tom Baker. He later, left the monastery, got married. He's been married several times. And one of his wives was one of his Doctor Who co-stars, Lalla Ward. And they're only married a few years, and after they got divorced, Lalla Ward ended up marrying Richard Dawkins. And Dawkins grew up Catholic. He grew up Anglican, and by the time he became an adult, he became an avowed atheist. So it's interesting. Two of Lalla Ward's husbands had a religious background, but they both became avowed atheists. So, and could I just mention one other thing? Speaking of Doctor Who, I brought this up to you 2 years ago when I first started corresponding with you. The actor who played the role of the Doctor before Baker was John Pertwee. Pertwee lived from 1919 to 1996. So between 1939 and 45, he was in the Royal Navy during World War II. And for the first 2 years of his naval career, Pertwee was assigned to the HMS Hood, which would later be sunk by the Bismarck in May of 1941. Men, and there are only 3 survivors. Yes, That's 3 survivors out of 1,400 men. However, for Pertwee, just a few weeks before the Hood left Portsmouth for her final voyage, Pertwee got transfer orders to switch over to the Royal Office of Naval Intelligence.
Yeah, fantastic, George. Never really thought of the Hood as a false flag. Great to dig even further in that.
Well, for what it's worth, if you look at
George mentioned to me that the Doctor Who author, just quick, he was also good buddies with Ian Fleming, the founder of James Bond, British intelligence. And Ian Fleming, I found from reading William Donovan's Papal Knight, William Donovan's biography, that Donovan was also very close with Fleming. So it all kind of ties together. All these guys know each other, in the aristocratic class.
I said this to you in the email back then. As I said, Pertwee was born in 1919, and the Hood was sunk in 1941. So he was in his early 20s when this happened. So he was a nobody. But I guess somebody looked out and he said, you know what? We know the Hood's going to be sunk. So we probably, and since we have further use for Pertwee, it'd probably be a good idea that if he's not on it when it goes down. So I think he may have got the Father Brown, the Francis Brown treatment beforehand, or it could have been like the novitiates at the monastery at Hiroshima. So somebody appeared to be pulling strings for Pertwee behind the scenes. And as I said, growing up, I was a Doctor Who fan. But what does Doctor Who do? I'm sorry. What sort of message Doctor Who, promoted for decades? Evolution, dinosaurs, globe, all that, spinning globe, all that sort of stuff. And so I hate to say it.
By the way, George, let's bring us back to Epstein. Epstein was a big donor to all the Jesuit false cosmology. They even brought Hawking. What's his name? Stephen Hawking. They brought the actor, one of the actors that portrayed Stephen Hawking, that poor guy, invalid. They brought him to the island to make fun of. Stephen Hawking did this Jeffrey Epstein. I'll if you want, guys, I'll pull that up. I'm going through Epstein's book, and while George is going on, and I'm only through the E's. Oh, this is not good. Oh, this is really bad. I hope this is not my Chris Evans. Oh, I hope this is not my Chris Evans. I'm so disappointed. So far, down to the E's. Boy, what a disappointment. Debbie and Bota von Bismarck, Vanessa von Bismarck, Lord and Lady Beaumont, Conrad and Barbara Black, Richard Branson, Chris and Allison Brown, John Cleese, Sophie Dahl, Adam Dell, Duke and Duchess of York, and my Chris Evans. I hope it's not my Chris Evans. I'll keep going, guys, if you want to give me a minute to go through, because that's what both the New York Times and the Miami Herald carefully avoided, is mentioning any of the names here. Several Finnis, not just Ralph Finnis, the actor. Martin Finnis. There's actually two.
Well, that's why I think if they do end up, if Epstein ends up going to jail due to the outrage of the Acosta softball, I think they're going to do a special agreement where it'll just be Epstein that goes to jail. So there'll be some type of immunity clause where everyone who is going to the Epstein mansions, another word for it, the co-conspirators will be immune. And actually, with the initial deal, that's what actually happened. Acosta signed a deal saying everyone close to Epstein is immune. So they'll probably repeat that.
All of the harpy pig bitches that were going out and recruiting kids, the honeypot pigs that were going out and recruiting kids, were given immunity and new lives. These bitches, they are worse than the rapists. because they sucker the girls, they sucker the kids in, because as women, they're not as threatening or intimidating. And I'm gonna bring those names up shortly. Steve Forbes, Steve and Sabine Forbes, Kip Forbes, Tom and Richard Ford. Let's see here. David and Lady Karina Frost. That piece of crap. That idiot. Let's see here. Bear with me as I go through these names. Mark Getty. Oh, what a surprise.
Oh, is he the Jesuit trained Getty?
Yes, the one that's so quick to gobble up all of the incriminating photographs and copyright them. What a surprise that he's been to Orgy Island.
Mark Getty.
Oh,
Oh, gee, Mark Getty looks like he was born in Rome, Italy. Attended the Taunton School, another private school, St. Catherine's School. And the Getty, people don't know Getty. They have the Getty oil. They're a very powerful, family. There's been many Jesuit trained Gettys. There's been like 3 or 4.
Habsburg. Are you kidding me? The Habsburgs are still there and still.
There's a Habsburg. Oh yeah, you better believe they're still there. They're ruling the Order of the Golden Fleece out in Austria. The Habsburgs are going to this though. Holy cow!
Yes,
So
Marie Habsburg is in his black book, and I want to reiterate: Michael Bloomberg and Tony Blair, that scum, that turd, who waited until after he left as prime minister to let everybody know. Oh, by the way, yes, I'm Catholic. Nobody knew I was Catholic, but I waited until after I got out. The same one that signed the EU Constitution underneath the statue of which is the one there?
That was Pope Innocent X. Yeah, and this Pope Innocent X was like condemning the Treaty of Westphalia, and he was also
brilliant.
Pope Innocent X was also what at the end of the 30 Years' War. The source for this is Theodore Greisinger's book, The Mysteries of the Vatican. But Pope Innocent X was very angry that the Protestants and the Catholics stopped fighting each other.
Yes, perfect, and that's the statue. Innocent X, great picture, folks. It's still there's a tiny 200 by 200 pixel picture of Tony Blair still on the internet so far somewhere. If you don't use Google to search for it, don't use Googlican, which was born on the same birthday as the consecration of the Jesuits, September 27th. Marie Habsburg is in.
It's a female Habsburg, Marie Habsburg.
Yes, Marie Habsburg. Working through Dustin Hoffman. What a surprise! Jeff Hirsch. Going through the Hefner III, Bob Hefner III. What a surprise here. Heineken, Freddie Heineken. Let's see here. Let's go through. Folks, this is what you're not going to hear. Now, I left this link, and if you need this link again for this black book from Epstein, let me know. I'm going through Jeffrey Epstein's black book. I'm scrolling through, and I'm sure you guys are going to find Elizabeth Hurley. What a surprise. She's both. She was both a victim and a predator, probably a honeypot that was used to sucker in more kids. Peter HSU, Sue. Let's see here. Ann Hurst, Robert Hurst. Let's see here. Simon Hussey. Michael Jackson. We knew this. Michael Jackson's been to Orgy Island. Mick Jagger has been to Orgy Island.
Oh, wow.
Well, but I wonder if Mick was able to get any satisfaction there.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, hang on. Jareki, okay, we've already mentioned Jareki. Yeah. Let's see. Anton Katz. Going through the K's. Oh, Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo. Geez.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's a Cuomo Kennedy. It's weird. Where it's now he's got the last name. It's Kennedy, Cuomo, Andrew, and Kerry. I think he's put Andrew Cuomo there with a Kennedy. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Tell me Andrew Cuomo. It's under Kennedy, but right after Kennedy it says Kennedy, Cuomo, comma, Andrew and Kerry. So I'll take that. I'll take that as Andrew Cuomo, the gun confiscating communist Catholic piece of crap that took over from the gun confiscating communist piece of crap daddy, governor of New York. Perfect.
And brother of Chris.
Yes, on CNN. Bobby and Mary Kennedy.
Professional CNN propaganda.
Ted Kennedy Jr., Ed Kennedy, Senator Edward Kennedy, Gemma Kidd.
Actually, did Ed Kennedy? I know one of the younger Kennedys went to Georgetown. Is that
Henry Kissinger? Why would Gawker not put Henry Kissinger down there?
Henry Kissinger, well, Bilderberg Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations. He was a professor at Jesuit Georgetown University. He's a lifelong member at the CSIS think tank at Georgetown.
David Koch. Oh, Christopher Lambert. What a disappointment. The actor.
Let me say, I bet people with Kissinger, people are going to take advantage of that to say, "Oh, look, the big bad Jew Kissinger is at Epstein Island. It's a Zionist operation."
Please, we'll put that to bed. Jerry Lefcourt. Haven't even gotten through the L's. I want to go through this, guys. Just bear with me because this is what no one else is doing. Going through Epstein's Black Book with some of these names that you're all going to recognize. George, that's your phone. Jennifer McGuire. Sean Mahoney. Oh, I'm sure he's a good Protestant. Sean Mahoney. Peter Mandelson. Miss Lucy Manners. I don't know who that is. Sounds important. Let's see here.
Famous theme from that.
Christopher Mason. M's, Maxwell, bunch of Maxwells. John Mayhew, Mazzotti, McFarland, Anthony McFarland. There's a name. Let's see here. This is Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book. Metcalf, Miller, Mortafari. Moncton, that came up. Rosa Moncton. Where have we seen that before? Is that a relation to good old Lord Moncton, the Roman Catholic? George, Rosa Moncton. What's Asprey and Gerald Limited? Juliette Moore. What a surprise. George, you taking a bath? We need you to focus here.
Juliette. What was the last one? Juliette Lord.
Juliette Moore, the actress. Juliette Moore. Look up Rosa Moncton if she's connected to the Roman Catholic that constantly goes on the Bill Hicks show. Yoshi Nishio. Rosa Moncton. Look up.
Rosa Moncton.
Clive Eng, NG. Is that the Vietnamese financier connected to Clinton? I bet you it is. Oh, let's see here. Mr. Carletto O'Donnell. There's a good Italian, Irish, Roman Catholic, I'm sure. Tom Oates. Is that the singer?
Tom Oates. Not familiar with the name.
From Hall & Oates, is that the Oates from Hall & Oates, the group from the 80s and 90s? Let's see.
Yes.
Is it Tom Oates is the singer from Hall & Oates?
No. It's John Daryl Hall and John Oates.
John Oates. Okay, different Oates then.
Okay.
All right, down to the P's in Jeffrey Epstein's book. Picasso, Oliver and Olivier and Alice Picasso, really? Let's see here. Bear with me, folks. These are all the names that you're not going to get from the New York Times or the Miami Herald. Let's see here. Dave Putnam, I'm sure of the publishing conglomerate. Kate Reardon, Don Rappaport. Here.
So this is basically, so Orgy Island is basically the Caribbean version of almost like the Bohemian Grove, and girls can participate as well. So well, that seems like a fair assessment.
Yeah, with all these names, that seems what it's like. You know, this is like the power
Rothschild, Jessica Rothschild, Hannah Rothschild. Oh, there's 2 females, right?
Oh, there's 2 Rothschild. Is Kate Rothschild there?
I'm not seeing Kate. I'm seeing Jessica and Hannah.
I'm just mentioning that because Kate Rothschild actually was dating a rapper, Jay Electronica, recently.
Edward de Rothschild, Evelyn de Rothschild, also in Epstein's book.
Okay, Eric, if I could just address a question to you. I think almost all prominent rappers going back to the 1980s have been puppets. Occasionally, you'll have one who'll get out of line. He deviates from a script and he has to be reined in. One or two things will happen is he'll be corrected, or 2, he'll have an accident. He'll become depressed. Or was it Tupac Shakur? Was it back in the 1990s? So if you're a prominent rapper, or were a prominent rapper, you're a puppet. Would that seem like a fair assessment?
Oh, definitely. All the rappers that are getting all the mainstream attention, like all the rappers you hear on the radio, they're all puppets, like all of them.
Okay, but occasionally,
the quintessential example of that is Rick Ross, the gangster rapper from Miami, where Epstein's, where all this stuff happened. But Rick Ross, that's not his real name. He took that name from the real Rick Ross came up in the Gary Webb story in the San Jose Mercury News with the CIA bringing in cocaine into Los Angeles, and this rapper Rick Ross stole the Rick Ross name. He was actually an ex-jail guard. And he became this gangster rapper. And this gangster rapper Rick Ross actually made a song called Georgetown, and put the Jack the Bulldog mascot of the Jesuit school in the song art. For instance, but all you're right. All of them are puppets. Like Jay-Z. When you think of hip hop, in American culture, everyone thinks of Jay-Z. Even like for instance, my mom, like when my mom, she doesn't listen to rap at all, but when she thinks of hip hop, she thinks of Jay-Z. So like, Jay, for the average American, when they think of hip hop, they think of Jay-Z. But I just mentioned that because he literally has a course on him at Georgetown. There's a first or second year course at the Jesuit school on just Jay-Z lyrics.
Now, however, it's not just rap or hip hop. It's pretty much.
Oh, it's all. Yeah, you're right. It's all music, not just hip hop.
And of course, if you dig deep enough, almost all your popular artists were controlled or manufactured. Elvis, grew up Baptist, but he's a Freemason. And how did he get put out, or why was he puffed up back in the 1950s? Well, I hate to say this. He was a white man who basically took what was perceived to be black music and made it popular in America and around the world. So that was his ticket to fame, for example. And of course, we've discussed the Beatles in the 1960s. Their engineer, Sir George Martin, I believe he went to Stonyhurst.
Stonyhurst or St. Ignatius School over in England.
Okay, one of those two. So he was the puppet master behind the Beatles. So the problem, this is getting off topic there again. The problem with John Lennon is towards the end of his life, he started deviating from his scripts. He said, "You know what? I'm sick of being a puppet."
Obviously, but this all ties in because as Johnny's been going through the list, and if you want to keep going through it or finish it, Johnny,
I'm writing down the names so I can just hit them
But how many musicians have we named? We've listed tons of musicians and actors. So these people, once they get the fame and fortune, they start going to all these aristocratic parties. Like the rapper. We'll go back to the list here, but in the video I did on Action Bronson on his song "The Come Up," and Action Bronson went to Fordham on his song "The Come Up." The song is about how he became goes through the struggles to become a rapper. He says he's going to the after parties with politicians.
I can't
in the song.
Can't believe I found Chris Evans on this list. I'm so upset. Let's see here. All right, you ready for some more names here?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go back to the Epstein list.
Yeah, I'm going to finish this up, folks. I haven't looked in the chat. Make sure that little cockroach doesn't come back. Finishing up the W's. Here's the list so far. Jeffrey Sachs, Maria Shriver doesn't have a leg. Maybe she after she was humiliated by her husband Arnold. Maybe that's when she went to Orgy Island. There's no excuse. Maria Shriver, Andre Shearer, Ron Silver, the actor Jew, Peter Soros, nephew of the billionaire Soros, Leonard and Allison Stern, Tacky, Ivanka Trump has her own entry there. Robert and Blaine Trump.
Both Ivana and Ivanka? Did I hear that?
Yes, both Ivana and Ivanka Trump have separate entries in Epstein's book. Chris Tucker, Governor Charles Turnbull, Barbara Walters. I would expect she'd be drooling on herself, the old harpy. Barbara Walters and Mike Wallace, two phony journalists, quote unquote. Bob Weinstein, which is, I'm sure, a family member of the Weinstein pedo. Jim Wyatt, I'm pretty sure that's connected to the hotel chain. Let's see here. Rounding out the W's, Andrew Yates.
Bob is Harvey's brother, I believe.
There it is. Good job, George. Good job. And I think it just keeps on going. Oh, there's separate listings for actual cops. There's police departments of unnamed. Let's see here. Was that Robert Goldberg? It says police. Oh, maybe that's from the group. It says police. Underneath police, it says Robert Goldberg. I don't know what that means.
Oh, wow. He had police protection.
And he's got a separate listing for his helper. Ghislaine Maxwell, Bel Air Hotel, Aspen Club, Kenny George.
The Aspen Club. The Aspen Club is a very powerful. It's like a CFR type think tank.
Yeah, well, that explains why
I saw the Jesuit trained CIA agent David Shedd at Georgetown speaking there not too long ago.
And that explains why it's in Epstein's little black book. Bear Stearns has a separate Centurion Bank, Chemical Bank. Interesting that these are part of his black book.
Actually, what did I jump in, George?
Excuse me, Chemical Bank. I don't know much about it, but the name sounds sinister. Chemical. Okay, so you're talking about two. So you're talking about two Jesuitical connections.
Well, Chemical Bank actually, that was the first bank that actually adopted the ATM machine. Now that you bring that up, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, yeah, and the ATM machine was patented by the double dipped Jesuit trained Donald Wetzel. But the Chemical Bank was the first bank that ran with the ATMs. And actually, now that you bring that up, I know there are many Jesuit trained people at Chemical Bank.
It sounded like a side business for IG. It would sound like a side business for IG Farben or DuPont.
All right, so I want to go back to the Slimes article because we're running out of time fast. Pleaded guilty to 2 lesser charges. Okay, so what brought out the naming the names, folks, which you're not going to get from anyone else. No one else anywhere is going to name names for you. And the Black Book, as I put the link in the chat, I've got the link. The Black Book is still out there. Gawker should have the link to the original PDF, although Gawker didn't mention half of the notable names. I'm sure there are many more names of people that you may not recognize, prosecutors, judges, cops, and so forth, that he paid for, bought with the blood of children, to abuse children. Back to the Slimes piece. He pled guilty. He pleaded guilty. I think you should have said he pled guilty to lesser state charges of soliciting prostitution, serving 13 months in a county lockup. By the way, did we mention that he paid the local sheriff's deputies to provide him security while he was under arrest? Did we mention that? Palm Beach County Sheriff. Did we mention that he paid the Palm Beach County Sheriff deputies to provide his security while he was so-called on house arrest? This pedo piece of crap, this puppet, papal court puppet Jew provider to the rich and shameless. U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan brought charges against Epstein, denied the comment. CBS Miami reported Epstein was arrested Saturday night at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Arrived from Paris. One of the links in his book was Paris massage. I'm sure nothing's going on in Paris. Paris is locked down tight. You're not going to have kids being raped in Paris. I'm sure that's how it happened. Women said they were Epstein's victims have repeatedly assailed federal prosecutors for agreeing to non-prosecution deal with him more than a decade ago. Let me reiterate that. Okay, real quick. Why is your current Secretary of Labor, Andrew Acosta, the federal prosecutor who hooked this pig up? Because by being the Secretary of Labor, he oversees the enforcement or lack of enforcement of child sex slave trafficking laws as the Secretary of Labor. Unbelievable. This scum, Andrew Acosta, who covered for this pig back in 07, 08, was your pedophile president's pick to be the Secretary of Labor. John Jack Scarola was lawyer for the two victims. Good old John Jack. His nickname is Jack.
Jesuit trained, right, at Georgetown?
Double dipped at Georgetown for his bachelor's and for his ambulance chaser degree. Jackie Scarola, a good Italian Roman Catholic, double dipped at Georgetown. What a surprise. Florida investigation.
So I think this is setting up for it. They're going to really just bury Epstein and no one else is going to go for this. Just to add to this, there was a Jesuit Fordham professor. What was his name here? There's an article from the Miami Herald. Bruce Green, a professor of legal ethics at Jesuit Fordham, says, called the Epstein criminal case a slam dunk. So, but there is a lot of it is in a sense a slam dunk because there's so much incriminating evidence against him. But they're not gonna. I think they're just gonna zero in on him, and they're gonna do some type of immunity agreement, and then after the fact that he's a Jew and just be like, oh look, like this Jewish depravity, we have a problem in America, like Jews being out of control.
They brought him in on 2 counts. They could have him on a telephone book of criminal activity. But the activity has, I guarantee you, the 2 counts, I got to find the specific charges. I guarantee you they have nothing to do with trafficking children. I guarantee you they have nothing to do with the trafficking of children. It's just him being a pervert, pedophile piece of crap. Some of the girls were runaways or foster children. What a surprise. The same children the Catholic Charities of the Virgin Islands supposedly spent so much time on that Epstein donated to. According to court records, in 2007, an interview with the FBI, one girl shared that at age 15, she began visiting Epstein, giving massages, and then it went downhill from there. Let's see here. Plea deal, Epstein, federal charges signed by the top federal prosecutor at the time, Alexander Acosta, now Trump's labor secretary. In February, a judge in Florida ruled that prosecutors led by Acosta violated federal law when they failed to disclose Epstein's non-prosecution agreement to his victim. Violated, is it federal law? Violated federal law. So the prosecutors should be in orange jumpsuits. In February, a Florida judge, why are they not immediately arrested? In other words, they pulled this deal off and violated federal law by not alerting the 60 to 100 victims. I'm sure that's not part of the proceedings, but they eventually found that the FBI and the Miami Herald, 60 to 100 victims. I'm sure there's more. Acosta defended handling, saying, hey, we sent the plea deals. We guaranteed he would go to jail. You piece of shit. He checked in once a week in jail. You lying bastard.
Yeah, he didn't even have to be there. Yeah, he wasn't there all day. Like he wasn't required to actually stay overnight at the jail.
One of the victims, you believe that? One of the victims, Courtney Wild, now 31, wearing braces when she first met Epstein. Jeffrey preyed on girls who were in a bad way, girls who were basically homeless. She told the Herald. He went after girls who thought no one would listen to, and he was right. What a monster! He made a good priest. He made a good Catholic priest. Investigators found more than 30 victims, and the Herald located 60, and yet he's only being arrested on 2 counts.
Speaking of that last comment, I think it was on the wiki page of Epstein. I think this is where I found this, but there was a mainstream commenter who compared this case to the Catholic Church's handling of sex abuse cases.
Perfect. All right, I'll do one of the Miami Herald articles real quick, and I'll throw it into the chat for you guys. Hey, Joe, Minas, Jeremy, good to see you guys. Zach.
While you're pulling that up, Johnny, I just wanted to mention this quick point, just because this guy here, John Francis Timoney, the chief of the Miami Police Department, was from 2003 to 2010. John Francis Timoney got his master's degree from Jesuit Fordham University. And actually, the Miami Police, I think the Epstein incident took place in Palm Beach, but the Palm Beach PD is like the Miami Police Department's the bigger overarching police force in the area. And this guy John Francis Timoney was very plugged in. Like he was also the police chief of Philadelphia before being shipped into Miami to be the chief. And he was first with the NYPD. He started doing clerical duties he was assigned to clerical duties in the 17th precinct.
There it is. Virginia Roberts was working at the Donald Trump. Hang on, George. I'm going to let you get in. Virginia Roberts was working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort when she was recruited to be a masseuse by Ghislaine Maxwell for hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein. George, you want to jump in before I dig into this article?
Yes. So I just want we've talked about this before, but Eric just mentioned somebody, I forgot his name, who was the chief of police.
I linked him in the bio. It was John Francis Timoney. And you can see a photo of him like laughing it up with Jesuit Joe Biden. Joe cycle.
Okay, so this brings up a question. You've had a number of figures over the years, like William Braxton, who was the police commissioner in New York City, Boston, LA. Why is it, and there have been others, why is it they bounce all over the country, i.e. America? Don't they have any competent cops in their own force to be chief?
Yeah, actually, George, it's a very big red flag. Very big red flag when they fly in somebody. It fits with the paradigm of not born here that the Catholic Church uses again and again and again. When you want to abuse a populace, you make sure that your Stalin, your strong arm, your tyrant does not have childhood ties to the citizenry. You pull them from another location.
Okay, the chief of police for Dallas, Texas, I forgot her name, Jennifer.
The current one, it's Renee Hall, and she went to Jesuit Detroit Mercy. I'm pretty sure. and she was trained by the FBI for good measure.
Okay, and of course we talked about this last week. The police chief at Portland, Oregon, is from Oakland, Danielle Lawless. So she has no affinity. She has no loyalty.
Oh, I think it's outlaw.
Yes. What did I say?
Lawless. Pretty much the same thing. Outlaw, lawless.
Sorry, is a Freudian slip, which is okay. So which is a somewhat ironic name for a cop, but anyhow. So they're bringing these outsiders.
Go ahead, George. Finish your thought.
Okay, they're bringing these outsiders, who have no connection to the community. As Johnny was just saying, they have, they didn't go to school there. They don't have family there. They didn't eat in the local restaurants growing up. They didn't, and so they're basically a foreigner taking over. Now I realize they're fellow U.S. citizens, but it does psychological harm, I believe, to the local citizens. Like, wait a second, who is this woman? If you're in Portland, who is Daniel Outlaw or Danielle Outlaw? Who is this woman in Dallas? Oh, so anyhow, well, get back to your reading if you would,
Yeah,
Johnny.
yeah, yeah. So here are the honeypots. Here are the accomplices that got off scot-free. The pigs, the harpy pigs. These females, besides this Jewish Ghislaine Maxwell, heiress, another silver spoon heiress, a real pervert who suckered these poor girls, these children in. Nadia Marcinkova got these great plea deals. Sarah Kellen, who is now married to NASCAR driver Brian Vickers. She was used as a honeypot for these children. Two more names, Adriana Roth and Leslie Groff. These harpy pigs are worse than the rapist men. Worse, because they went in and they tricked these children into becoming sex slaves. And in Johnny's kingdom, I don't know if whatever we would give as punishment, it would be bad. It would be Inquisition bad. These harpies would get worse than whatever that was. I mean, the papists like to burn people alive. Maybe something along those lines.
Well,
Because I don't think it's much worse.
despicable, and I don't know if they consciously realize how much they're being used also
Yeah,
by their papal
they-
masters. Because when stuff does hit the fan, like these women are the ones who are going to be disclosed, not like the
No excuse.
Okay. Okay, you know what, Johnny?
excuse. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry for keep interrupting you. The show would have been long over if I weren't involved with it. But
No, keep going.
anyhow, do you remember? Okay, have you seen the movie Pulp Fiction?
Yeah, been a while.
Okay,
But yeah.
okay. So you remember the other token? Okay, yes, Sam Jackson, but then you had the other token black in the movie, Ving Rhames, when he's talking about getting even with the bad guys who basically raped him. And there's a line in the movie where he says he's going to call it a crew to settle the score, and he said, "I'm going to get medieval on your behind. I'll clean it. I'll try to battleize it," or I did it. So, in other words, when people don't realize that, when he said, "I'm going to get medieval on you," what he should have said is, "I'm going to get Catholic Church Inquisitional on."
Good for you.
Okay.
Good for you.
So,
yeah. I'm pulling up the article. Let's see here. We would like to get medieval on all of them. So as a quick recap, folks, let me see if it's available on the internet, because I've got like 15 articles that I have. Let me see if Epstein arrest 2 counts. I want to see specifically what those 2 counts are. Yeah, okay. So supposedly one of the counts is sex trafficking. Okay, we'll see. There might be some bite to that.
Yeah, that's what I think.
There's a lot
I think
more.
they might. I think they're going down the route where this is such like an explosive case where they have to do something like to prevent people this is like a potential rioting situation, like a case, like it's like outrageous, like for what he did and the leniency he got. So I think they're gonna bury him, and then just to stress the fact, they're gonna do some type of immunity deal where it'll just be Epstein. That's
How is good for you, Eric? How is not the name? It should be Epstein Acosta Trump. Boom, boom, boom. Epstein Acosta Trump. Epstein Acosta Trump. At the bare minimum in every headline. But the only headline is Epstein. The sitting Secretary of Labor responsible for overseeing the enforcement or lack of enforcement of child sex trafficking laws is the guy that created this outrage. Okay, so
like he's got job security. He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
here's
He's
here's
sticking around.
I think this is right, job security. This is from the Daily Beast. What's the I don't have the date. I do have a date. Back in 2016. This is the Daily Beast. I'll put this in the chat. Guthrie, what's the first name of this victim? Guthrie. Oh, Virginia Roberts Guthrie. Guiffre. Virginia Roberts is her maiden name. She got married. Guthrie is her married name. You're absolutely right. Alan Dershowitz hired Opus Dei Louis Freeh, former head of the FBI, to investigate the victim. And in the meantime, Dershowitz is accused of impersonating a police officer. How that piece of shit isn't drooling on himself, 80-year-old Jew fall guy, drooling himself in a prison cell. Professor Dershowitz.
The chief of Miami Police was literally went to Jesuit Fordham, so that could be a reason.
Oh, what a surprise!
And and very obviously, Louis Freeh, did his tough investigation and found no wrongdoing. It's like he found no wrongdoing in the Penn State case. No extra wrongdoing. In that case was basically the same thing. Like that was all about pinning it just squarely on Sandusky, right? Like there was no one else that went down.
Bingo. Sandusky was the fall guy. Absolutely. Meanwhile, I've got sources, and I mentioned this in Eaters of Children. The exact same thing. Brilliant connection, Eric. The exact same thing. Sandusky was pimping out little boys to the rich and shameless, just like Epstein. Fall guys. Sandusky, Epstein, Lawrence King. Fall guys. Kick the fall guy to the curb. Oh, by the way, Lawrence King. Jail, right? Yes. He went to jail for 15 years. Why? For trafficking children? No. Embezzling $40,000 of Boys Town money. Lawrence King went to prison for only 15 years for embezzling $40,000 from the Franklin Federal Credit Union, a large amount of which belonged to Boys Town, who at that time, 30 years ago, had an annual income of $5 million. An orphanage, a Catholic orphanage. Where the frig did they get that kind of money from unless it was for child trafficking? And that's good old Robert Hupp. Good old Robert Hupp, who is the United States representative to the United Nations on matters of child safety. Robert Hupp, who paid a young lawyer by the name of John DeCamp to represent him. Did you know that?
Yeah,
Robert Hupp.
That's one of the keep going. This is a fantastic information. But saying that's one of how the early connections, how DeCamp wrote the book. Huff was one of the
DeCamp, almost Catholic monk, John DeCamp, who as a teenager spent time in a seminary. His job, he was told personally by the prefect for the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, which is what today is the Inquisition. The Inquisition became the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. At that time, it was Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, Nazi youth Joey, had a personal encounter, had a personal audience with John DeCamp, Army intelligence, worked for William Casey, the Saigon station chief during the Vietnam War, on Project Phoenix.
Oh, is that Colby?
Colby, I'm sorry, good for you. Bill Colby, William Colby. William Boating Accident Colby. William I Can't Swear Colby.
Yeah, he's just as plugged in as Casey. Might as well have been Casey.
Casey is just as Catholic and the CIA director. I get them mixed up because they're both Bill and they both start with a C. But it was Colby. Good for you. CIA station chief in Saigon. And his aide de camp was John DeCamp, who helped work on the war crimes that was Project Phoenix. Later on, he became a Nebraska, I think, senator, state senator, not federal, not United States senator, state senator for Nebraska. He was brought in by Joey Ratzinger when he was in charge of the Inquisition, Congregation for the Doctrine of the Cardinal. And he said, listen, my son, you need to redirect the upcoming investigation. The investigation is coming. I just happen to know. I looked at my crystal ball, and I know the fact that little boys have come up missing from Boys Town, and they end up in Washington, D.C., being buggered by George Bush and Ronald Reagan and a lot of their friends. So an investigation is coming, and there's a lot of problems here in town in Omaha, Nebraska. The children are ending up being buggered by the chief of police, by the newspaper editor. I'll pull that piece of crap's name, the chief of police that ended up moving to Chicago.
Oh, Wadman?
Oh, got it.
Good. Oh, brilliant. Home run. Robert Wadman. Boom. Home run. Robert Wadman. Out.
So, Johnny.
I was saying, Wadman, he shot down that investigative reporter, right, over his. I think we covered that a couple briefs ago. Well, I think did Johnny. I think his audio went out there.
Okay, so anyhow,
George, this is just. I'll just add here something. This is a reoccurring theme over and over again. We saw. DeCamp was sent in to sever the Catholic connection to the Franklin cover-up scandal. And we can see this Epstein is, you could say, like our, 21st century Franklin scandal. This will be one of the biggest sex scandals in the U.S. Boys Town was this was one of the biggest sex scandals since Boys Town. But another one I just want to mention, I linked this in the chat a while up, but it was a photo of the pedophile Jimmy Savile with Pope John Paul II. And there's a photo of John Paul II putting his right hand on Jimmy Savile's left shoulder. And Jimmy Savile is actually wearing looks like his Knight of St. Gregory the Great cross. And, it's the same blueprint in all of these scandals. Like Savile, the scandal, just like the Boys Town scandal, there was nothing connecting the Catholic Church to Jimmy Savile. And surely if there was investigative reporting, and if documents were allowed to be released, surely that's what we would find. It was Savile was working hand in hand with the, Catholic hierarchy and like just the, financial aristocratic elite, in England.
Okay. Well, speaking of Savile, he was officially known as Sir Jimmy Savile. So he was a knight of the British Empire or commander or whatever boy bargaining title they gave him. So he had a secular knighthood and he had a religious knighthood. And as you said, there's a picture of him meeting with Karol Wojtyła, aka John Paul II, in the early 1990s. Well, after Savile died in 2011, it finally came out that all of his decades of predation actually came out. The stories of how he'd been doing stuff since the 1950s and how he had at least hundreds of victims. So there's a demand from Catholics in Britain saying, you know what, the Vatican should posthumously revoke his papal knighthood. Turns out that they can't, because once you're granted knighthood, you're always a knight, even after death. So that is basically how even from the grave, Savile is still torturing his victims.
Well, in his case, I found I heard Johnny say this. I found the news story. This was some independent or some British paper, but he did like a priest. He would while he was raping his victims, he would do these priestly rites where he would speak in Latin. And, pray to Satan.
Oh, okay.
So but you don't just the average person doesn't just learn Latin. That's what I took back from that story. He was obviously taught Latin by some Catholic priest.
Well, I mean, he could have.
Or I don't know if he went to I don't know if he took Latin courses at school or something like that. But I thought it was odd that he was doing these Latin chants while he was molesting his victim.
So this is actually the real bombshell, the Epstein book. So anyhow, so Okay, there's something I need to mention. I'm trying to multitask, um, and
It
I'm
looks
having a
like
hard time.
it looks like just quickly. It looks like Johnny got booted out of the chat. I sent him another invite.
Okay, is he still with us?
No, he's not. It's just me and you in here right now.
Okay, could you send him an invitation, invite him back?
Yeah, I sent him a couple just now. Let's see if he's emailed me at all. I'll send him an email too. Yeah, I'll send him another one just for good measure.
Okay, well, thank you. So, anyhow, there's something I wanted to bring up. I know he was talking about. Well, have you noticed that in the last 2.5 years, since Donald Trump has been the U.S. president, um, you know, those on the left have been very critical of him, and sometimes it's justified, sometimes, well, perhaps not as much. But have you noticed how many hardcore Catholics have been critical of Trump? Rosie O'Donnell,
Oh,
Madonna.
Jerry Brown, Jesuit trained Jerry Brown, Jesuit trained Mitch Landrieu, the mayor of New Orleans. He's been a big Trump critic. I think he was
Okay,
criticizing Trump for not making like America a sanctuary country.
okay. Well, don't worry. That'll happen soon enough.
Well,
Probably with
at this
that'll,
rate, especially if the Democrats get into power, like I think definitely America. You see, like they were asked a question, will your healthcare plan provide benefits for illegal immigrants? All 12 of them raised their hands.
yes. So that'll probably happen with the next administration. Before that, you'll have currently here in America. You only have two sanctuary states. Unfortunately, my California and Connecticut.
And just
Uh,
for the viewers, just both of those states had Jesuit trained governors when they were made
okay.
a sanctuary state.
So anyhow, but I mentioned that because
Oh, just for and I just meant the Dan Malloy in Connecticut and Jerry Brown in California.
yes, and of course, and the current governor of California, Gavin Newsom, was trained by the Jesuits. So they have an absolute chokehold on this state. I mean, they're just basically. I mean, their knuckles are just turning pink because they're squeezing the state so tightly. Um, Now, I mentioned this about all these Catholics who are anti-Trump: Rosie O'Donnell, Madonna, Kathy Griffith, um Stephanie Miller, who grew up Roman Catholic, Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo, Jerry. I mean, and you mentioned so. Well, there's somebody else. Now, I don't know if she's actually Catholic. Megan Rapinoe is a female footballer, soccer player. She's on the U.S. World Cup club. Um, and I guess I don't follow that sport closely, but I guess they won the World Cup. And the club was supposed to go meet the president, but Rapinoe and some of her teammates declined. Uh, Rapinoe is a staunch homosexual, lesbian. She allegedly married her partner recently, and she's from California. And her now I don't know her religious background, but she applied. She was born in 1985, and she applied to several schools for undergraduate degree. One of which was the University of Santa Clara, and she was accepted, but she declined. Now she and her twin sister were supposed to go there. They decided to go elsewhere. So this is yet another example of controlled opposition against Trump.
Well, I've yet to see like a real opposition against Trump.
Well, I'm sorry. I need to make a correction. She has not quote married end quote her partner, but they're still partners. Um, so anyhow, turns out now Rapido grew up basically in my neck of the woods, Northern California, within a couple hours from where I live. But she actually has a brother who's in prison in California, Pelican Bay, which is in near Eureka, California. Oh, here's something interesting about Rapido. Her girlfriend, Susan Bridget Bird, is an American Israeli. So, that's interesting. But anyhow, I hope Johnny can rejoin us.
Yeah. I'll see if he got back to me here. No, nothing yet. Send him another invite.
Oh! Newsflash! I just looked this up. Her girlfriend, okay, Megan Rapido is on the U.S. Female Football Club. Her girlfriend, as I said, is Sue Bird. Sue Bird, even though she's Jewish and she's American Israeli, she actually went to a Catholic high school in New York, Christ the King High School.
What was that shows that athletes are always used as political pawns.
Just like
yeah, they're just they're politicians really first. Dwayne Wade, the Jesuit-trained Marquette NBA player, has been calling for gun control for years. He sounds just like Andrew Cuomo on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
So the players are always doing that. That's part of it's all politics, and that's why when the championship team wins every year, they usually go to the White House too.
Except for that would be a little bit awkward for the Raptors.
Yeah, I don't know if Trump made an invitation out to the Raptors or not. They probably wouldn't go. They probably wouldn't go see Trump because the Raptors have to represent the new liberal ideology.
So will they meet Justin?
Actually, they did. Yeah, Justin, Jesuit-trained Justin was meeting with them during the team celebration in Toronto. Okay. Yeah, he was there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I didn't watch all the footage, but I wouldn't be surprised if they let Trudeau hoist up the trophy too.
Oh well, good for them.
Yeah, actually, I mentioned this. The Raptors lead announcer Jack Anderson went to Fordham. He's been doing the game. He's been doing the games, I think, for 8 or 9 years now. And actually, for the national, the NBA Finals, it's the national level. They had Jesuit Fordham trained Mike Breen does the finals every single year on ABC. He's been doing it for I think 8 years now, probably even over 10 years. He's been doing it for a long time. Mike Breen is Jesuit trained, and Bob Myers. People didn't see this. You were the one to mention this. He went to Loyola Marymount, the Golden State Warriors GM, but he had this Jesuitical theater press conference after one of the Warrior games where Kevin Durant got hurt, Game 5 of the finals, and Bob Myers had these. He was fake crying at the press conference. He's like, "Oh, I feel so sorry for Kevin Durant." It was hilarious. There was no tears actually coming down from his face. I got the impression that his Jesuit masters have taught him well. Bob Myers is a very shady general manager. If you look into some of his decisions.
So recently, the Warriors have won what the last 10,000 or been in the champions the last 10,000 years. They've been there longer than basketball has even existed. I mean, it's or I'm sorry, 5 years. Okay,
It seems like
close
well,
enough.
they basically like the Warriors have made basketball like it'll be a little different now just with the current free agency, but like the last 5 years they made the NBA just like uncompetitive. Like you already knew who's going to win the finals before the year even started. And even this year, like if Kevin Durant, their star player, was playing against the Raptors, like the Raptors would have lost because like they literally put like an all-star team together on the Golden State. It just made the league kind of a joke. Like they won 73 basketball games, George, and then they had like the second best player in the world join the team that had just won like the most regular season games of all time. Like to talk about like just a joke of competitive balance. But it's all
Well,
entertainment at the end of the day. And the NBA and the NFL, all these leagues can have the legal right to rig their games. They have the legal right to rig trades, to rig storylines. Like there was actually a Jets fan that sued the NFL in 2007 after the Spygate scandal, where the Patriots were caught cheating and like reading the plays of other teams. But that fan's lawsuit, it was declared that as a fan, you only have a contractual right to like the seat in the stadium. Like you have no. It was ruled that the NFL is entertainment. Like it's no different than wrestling. Like the NBA is no different than WWE wrestling. Also,
and of course, well, it's interesting. Golden State. For a long time, they were in Oakland. They're now moving over to San Francisco, which is the home of the University of San Francisco. And we were talking earlier about Boys Town, which is in Omaha, which is the home of the University of Creighton and Creighton Prep, or Creighton, however you say it. So you have these organizations, sports teams, or this orphanage that are almost literally in the shadows of these major SJ institutions. And and I don't think that's a coincidence because something we've discussed before, generally speaking, if you look at almost all your professional sports teams in the US or Canada, they're adjacent to within a few miles or a few kilometers of a major Catholic or Jesuitical institution. You have, just talk about locally for me, you have the Golden State Warriors here, you have the San Francisco 49ers, you have the San Francisco Giants, you have the Oakland Athletics, you have the San Jose Sharks. All of them are sandwiched in between the University of San Francisco and University of Santa Clara. In metropolitan New York, you have the Yankees, the Mets, the Nets, the Jets, the Giants. Uh,
first it's I have a name up here. The owner of the Cardinals is currently his name is Bill Bidwell, William V. Bidwell Sr. He went to Georgetown University and Georgetown Prep and enlisted in the U.S. Navy. He's owned the Cardinals. He's co-owner he's owned the Cardinals outright since 1972.
Okay, are you talking about the baseball team?
The football team.
Oh,
There's
okay.
the Jesuit Bro-Free Prep School in Phoenix, where where the Cardinals play. One of kind of the lower profile Jesuit school, but there's still some prominent alumni. Like the guy who the guy on the Allstate commercials. Oh, what's his name? I'll pull it up.
Dennis. Dennis.
What?
Dennis Hazard or something. He's black.
Or what was this? This is that's I know what you're talking about. This is the white guy who did the Allstate commercials. What was his Dean Winters? Yeah, Dean Winters. Dean Gerard Winters. He does he's on Law and Order, 30 Rock, Rescue Me. He's like in the Allstate guy, he's like, "Oh, we protect you from mayhem."
Yes.
He's that guy. And he went to Bro-Free College Prep in Phoenix, for instance. So there are some intriguing alumni on that school. John McCain sent his kids there.
Mm-hmm. John McCain, the Southern Baptist, the Freemasonic Southern Baptist.
Yes. He wanted to suspend the Posse Comitatus Act in 2011.
Okay, John McCain, John Sidney McCain III, son of two Navy admirals named McCain.
Yeah, he's like he's the stereotypical, neoconservative.
You guys still going?
Oh,
yeah.
back in, right on.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. And just to wrap this up, Dean Winters. I know you mentioned John Wick is kind of like a Vatican movie because like the table in John Wick kind of like the Jesuits because like they're kind of like this. The table is kind of like all powerful and like all pervasive like the Jesuits, but the Jesuit educated actor Dean Winters was in John Wick. He played the AV in the movie.
You guys still going?
Yes, we are.
We're going here.
I got. That's really weird how my stuff just stopped working. My going off my phone. I said the name Robert Wadman and everything just stopped.
Yeah, that's right where that's right where we cut off. Actually, I was asking it was Wadman. I forget the investigative journalist name. You mentioned this a few briefs ago.
Gary Caradori is the private investigator whose plane blew up in midair. He and his son were killed over Wadman's new jurisdiction. He transferred from Omaha to a little podunk town in the suburbs of Chicago. And by coincidence, Gary Caradori's plane blew up over his jurisdiction, over Robert Wadman's jurisdiction. We'll pick right up where I left off. Lawrence King went to prison for 15 years for embezzling Boys Town money. And one of the victims, Alicia Owen, went to jail for 25 years for having the nerve to try and out these high-profile pedos. 25 years they put that poor girl after raping her, after abusing her, put her in prison for 10 more years than Larry King because Larry King should have had the nerve to try and embezzle Boys Town sex trafficking money.
Actually, in Epstein's case, he probably knows this, and Epstein, instead of embezzling the money, he was giving money to.
These victims know it. The victims know it. The victims are aware. Now, some of this they settled out of court and they cashed in, but Epstein is still at large. And worse is he's just a fall guy. There is a massive system of child sex trafficking that is still
the photo at his house with his hand the Pope that photo was the Pope's hand around him. I think that says everything. That photo.
Yeah, I put the link up in the chat. I'm not near my computer right now. I put the link up of that Fox News article, the faux news article, the unnamed Pope. I think it just says with a Pope, which is unbelievable. You know what you have to do to get a papal audience? And Jeffrey Epstein just happened to get a papal audience. Maybe it's all the philanthropic work he was doing with Catholic Charities there in Virgin Islands.
That probably had something to do with it. And the popes. It just seems that a lot of these serial pedophiles are feel comfortable to be around the Pope. Jimmy Savile. We mentioned this while you're off the air, Johnny. I put it up in the chat. They put a link to the photo of Savile. You can actually see John Paul II's putting his right arm on Savile's left shoulder.
Brilliant.
It's kind of like kind of blessing him, and you can see Savile wearing his Knight of Saint Gregory the Great medallion in the photo. But you see, these pedophiles seem to be comfortable, hanging around the Pope.
Birds of a feather. Birds of a feather. They all do the same thing, and that brings us full circle. The crimes of the Catholic Church are no less than war crimes. You have an insurgent army of pedophile, child raping priests, many of them not born nor raised in their home country, sent to pray very often. They are located, they are identified as child raping pedophiles, and then they are promoted and sent to the United States. And as soon as they are outed by angry moron Catholic parents who 99 times out of 100, the pervert, oh, by the way, real quick, the governor of the Virgin Islands, John DeJong, another set of parents that should have been neutered before they had a chance to procreate. Another good little Catholic boy. He went to Catholic grammar school, high school, I think, in Detroit, Michigan, and then became governor of the Virgin Islands. During the critical years, for like 7 years, this clown was governor of the Virgin Islands. I guess they didn't have any term limits there. From 07 to 15, I think.
And then those are the years where Epstein was directly investing in the Catholic charities in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah,
that's an overlap.
What a coincidence. What a coincidence. So anyway, I threw myself off my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh, not born here. Yeah, so it's an insurgency. It's a war crime where you have these waves of, listen, step back. If a country wants to war on another country, what can they do? They can bomb you. They can get real nasty. They can send propaganda. They can send spies. They can try to poison your water supply. That was a possible plot in World War II from Japan. They can what can countries for?
Impose economic sanctions.
Oh yeah, that's big. You know, the economic There was a report that U.S. sanctions alone have killed 40,000 in Venezuela. Sanctions are. Oh, looks like Johnny was booted out again. Let's have another invite. Yeah, I was going to ask Johnny. I know in his he wrote about in Eaters of Children how Francisco Franco's regime, the Catholic priests would forcibly take children from the hospitals and place them in Catholic orphanages or cloisters, and it's disgusting stuff. It is military tactics. Hopefully he's able to get back in.
I wish Johnny could have got to his point. So he said, if you're paraphrasing, if you want to invade a country or destroy it, you have a few options. You can bomb them. You can poison them, which is, by the way, pretty much has been going on to America for at least decades. No, they haven't had airstrikes here for the most part, but we're being poisoned with GMOs. With chemicals in our, and other chemicals, pesticides in our food, and people are being encouraged to basically eat poison willingly. Fast food, junk food, soda, you name it. Fluoride in our water.
America is like the fast food heaven. Fast food everywhere.
Yes.
I just remember when I was a kid, I would go down to the U.S. and I asked at the McDonald's, "Can I get an orange juice?" And she's like, "Oh no, we don't have orange juice, but we have orange pop." Just that. I guess that just kind of exemplifies it.
Well,
what's the obesity? Do you know what the official obesity rate is in the U.S.? I know it's like states like West Virginia. I want to say it's like 40%.
Well, so yeah, of course. I mean, and you have this, and this particular problem is worse. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's a huge figure. But it's worse in the South and the Midwest, places that were traditionally Protestant. So this is how, and of course, and is worse in the South and Midwest and in your inner cities. So And you have all these people who are contracting these diseases and illnesses that they shouldn't. Just about every type of cancer, heart disease, uh, Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. People who should be in the peak of their health are getting sick and dying, prematurely, years, decades sooner than they should.
Hey, can I finish my thought? I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
Welcome back, Johnny. Please do.
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting you, George. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I was talking about what can a country do during why is got my headset and I look terrible. What can a country do to another country in war? Can you think of anything more evil? Can you think of a war crime more evil than an army, a literal army of voracious sexual deviants intent on worming their way into your family's confidence in order to rape your children? And if that sounds outrageous as an actual agenda, then explain to me how it is, as soon as many of these rapists are identified, as I was starting to say, 99 times out of 100, the brain dead, demented Catholic parents, when they find out a priest has raped their child, won't take it up with themselves. I'd be in jail myself. Won't take it to a cop, won't take it to a prosecutor. They take it to the clergy and the hierarchy. Brain dead Catholicism is a disease.
Well, see, that's part of like the Catholic Church keeps their flock in like a state of, I could say, almost like an intellectual like childhood. Like they don't allow you to read any material criticizing the Catholic Church. Like if they saw someone reading Johnny Cirucci's books, Aver Manhattan's books, they'd probably like burn the book, say like, oh, what are you doing? Like you're committing a sin here. Like they'll make you like they'll shame you for
yes. I will tell you, I had the exact same thing happen to me when I was younger. I had a book by a guy with a first name, I guess is a Frenchman, a first name of Lorraine Bettner. I think it's Bettner, Boettner, I think it is. And I think the title of the book is Roman Catholicism. My mom immediately recognized his name and voiced her disapproval. It really is a cult. It is a cult. And so these Catholic parents, many of them offer their children. They end up offering their children to be raped. Many parents, how many times have we seen this? I've seen it. I've listed it in Eaters of Children. When their children complain to their parents that they've been raped, abused, or violated by a member of the clergy, priest or nun, usually a priest, their parents beat them. How dare you? How dare you say that about Father McLaughlin?
Well, it's incredible the hold that the Catholicism has on their minds. And you did this on a brief. I think it was like 130 something. They put this phenomena into a movie. What you're just describing. It was called what was it? Doubt. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
There's that one outrageous scene where this was outrageous. The parent of the kid being abused is talking to the nun, and she's like, "Oh well, if he's getting abused, like it's good for him." Like that's basically what like the Catholic parents said.
Yeah. What a psyop, man! What a psyop. Oh my goodness, yeah. That movie was evil, because the purpose of the movie was to create doubt about accusations of child raping priests. No, really.
Well, it was pretty like listening to the audio clips. I haven't watched the movie, but the acting seemed good. Like it was just pretty intense and surreal. Some of the scenes in the movie, and it was with Philip Seymour Hoffman. I got the sense that like was he born Catholic?
Yes.
Just because I don't know, I think he tuned into it. He played the role of the of the Catholic priest well in that movie. But that movie, like, they put that really out in plain sight that this is what goes on. How many over and over again, like, there's what the Catholic priests do is they'll force these families, they'll pressure them into they sign the confession agreements, like secrecy agreements, where like they say like, oh, like, we'll give you some money, but you have to promise not to go to the authorities. Or so, like, there's no actual law in the federal code that says they can do that. But in several states though, like there it was in the state of Louisiana, which has a Knight of Columbus, John Bell Edwards, as their current governor, and Louisiana is a very Catholic state. But I know you talked about, Johnny, how in that state the Catholic priests are actually like exempt from the civil authorities to even discuss the matters of like sex abuse and pedophilia. That just shows the insurgency in your face in Louisiana, that like they're literally above the law. Like it's incredible. And I think just over and over again, like how many cases, like literally this year, like there's been investigations in Michigan that just came up like 4 weeks ago. Michigan opened an investigation. West Virginia opened an investigation. Illinois has opened an investigation into Catholic priest sex abuse. You had the Pennsylvania report. All this, there was that report. BuzzFeed News did that story out in Vermont. Where was it? St. Joseph's Orphanage. That came out that was last year, and like there was that was systemic, abuse. Like Catholic nuns were actually like torturing kids. There's no repercussions though.
The ones that upset me the most are the handicapped kids, handicapped orphans. Can you make a child any more vulnerable than to not have any parents, and God forbid to be deaf or blind? Can you make that child any more vulnerable? Is it any more evil? And it's happened again and again and again, of these monster clergy purposefully seeking out these poor children to rape and violate. Does it get any more evil? And why is that not constantly in the? It is, even though they try not to put it in the headlines, it's still in the headlines because it's so rampant. And there is never, ever even close to any justice.
And of course, to appease the people, what they'll do, what the Catholic Church will do, what their apologists will do is say, well, this is just a minor problem. You're just talking about one or two bad priests.
George, it's no more than the regular population. 6% of all populations are pedophiles. Meanwhile, it's the exact opposite. It's 6% of the celibate clergy manage to remain celibate and not commit a crime, although that's what the system does. By forcing you to spend your entire life celibate, you are guaranteed to have urges so overwhelming you will commit a crime in order to appease them.
Well, okay,
Joseph McCabe wrote extensively on the chronic problems of celibacy. And just, I want to mention, if you guys haven't seen this, you can, this documentary, this was done in 2006, but this is good. I think you guys would enjoy this. This is good information. But this is called Sex Crimes in the Vatican. This is on Daily Motion. The full documentary is still on Daily Motion. I tried putting it on my YouTube channel, but I got instantly a copyright strike. But this documentary was done by the BBC. But this documentary was about the sex abuse in Ireland. But it goes into this document called Crimen Solicitanus. Crimen Solicitanus. Latin means on the manner of proceeding in cases of crime of solicitation. This was a document that was released in 1962, approved by Pope John Paul XXIII. And this basically, this was addressed to quote, to all patriarchs, archbishops, bishops, and other local ordinaries, including those of the Easter Rite. It gave out specific instructions on how to carry out the rules in the canon law in dealing with cases of pedophilia. And they were told not to publish or produce commentaries on these cases. So this is an official, papal memo given in 1962 by Pope John Paul XXIII, telling Catholic priests to cover up these heinous crimes. And just that BBC documentary highlighted that a little bit. I'll put I'm going to put both the wiki of this document, Crimen Solicitanans or Solicitans. I just can't speak Latin. I'm putting that in there, and I'm also going to put the Daily Motion. I'll find that and put that in the chat. But
Well,
Go ahead, George.
well, that's okay, Eric. I can't speak English, but anyhow, you know I know the show is almost over. It's coming up on 1 p.m. Eastern. But if I could just say something, we're talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was in the movie.
Yeah. And also another big name female actress was in it. The Superman girlfriend.
Lois Lane.
Yes. The new. She plays Lois Lane in the new Superman.
Oh, you're not talking. What's her name? Not Sigourney Weaver. The nun. I'm drawing a blank.
Yes. She plays a nun. I'm not in front of my computer. Anyway, keep going, George. I don't want to.
Okay, so Hoffman. Okay, but I'm talking about the Mother Superior. She Streep, Meryl Streep.
Oh yeah, Meryl Streep. Yeah.
Well, ironically, Streep was supposed to be a Protestant. She grew up Presbyterian, and I wonder why she's been blown up. Now, of course, there has to be. I haven't looked into her husband or her kids or anything like that. I'll do some digging into Streep. But anyhow, Philip Seymour Hoffman just died a few years ago. It was the last 5 years, at the relatively young age of maybe 50, if that, 45, allegedly of a heroin overdose. So I'm not sure what was going on with him. I mean, it could have been a legitimate overdose, but he had not used drugs in years. So
that reminds me. I guess we should mention that the son of Doug Hagman, private investigator and former Jesuit seminarian Doug Hagman, frequent guest on the Bill Hicks, Alex Jones show, has his own show, very popular, the Hagman and Hagman Report. Lost his son Joe and openly said that it was to a heroin overdose. People have been critical of Doug's announcement. They felt he was a little too composed as he announced that his son Joe had died. And not to mention the fact, not to derail you, George, but kind of weird. I mean, both of these guys frequently talk up being Protestant Christians. Born again, being passionate born again Christians. And then out of the blue, Joe Hagman has such a heroin habit that he dies from it. What the hell is going on in the background there? I didn't mean to derail. That's all I have. I don't have anything else on this issue. But very suspicious. And of course, what very few people talk about is how when Doug thought he was off the air in between commercial breaks, how he admits to having been a Jesuit seminarian. And I have that clip and I've played it several times.
Yeah, it's kind of a muffled audio, but if you listen closely, you can hear it. You can hear that in that clip. And just a drug overdose seems to be one of the most convenient ways to, if it is a kind of like a ritualistic sacrifice situation, drug overdoses are the easiest ways to mask that. Like, for instance, Mac Miller had a drug overdose last year. He was with Ariana Grande after Mac Miller drug overdoses, and there was no details like in the you can look up, like, there was no details of who the 911 caller was. There was basically no details at all of that case. Mac Miller was actually the only rapper to make a song titled "The Jesuits." He actually made a song titled "The Jesuits," and like his ex-girlfriend, after he died, Ariana Grande literally turned into like a mega star. And there was that clip of Jesuit trained Bill Clinton like staring at her rear end at Aretha Franklin's funeral. But like literally, Mac Miller dies, and then she becomes a megastar. But like, it was a convenient way to I think get rid of Mac Miller, because he openly talk about drugs in his music. He's like, oh, this guy was just a druggie. He overdosed. He was like a bum, and it's just and it goes away just like that.
We recently went over this, and I don't want to, because I know we should be close to we should be close to closing it out. But we recently talked about high profile deaths of the children, or high profile offspring deaths. I'm trying to pull up my file real quick.
Yeah, John Travolta. Are you talking about going into John Travolta's kid?
All of them.
Yeah.
I have a very long list. Here it is. Let's see here.
Just because I'm a big, I guess I'm a student of, I know a lot about rap music, but this year there was a kind of an underground rapper, but this guy's still been around for a while. MF Doom. He's kind of like a masked rapper, but his like 13 or 14-year-old kid died like last year, which I just thought was very, very odd because 14-year-old kids don't usually just die like that.
I forgot to mention that one. Yeah. So very suspicious is George H.W. Bush, whose wife Barbara Bush was probably the offspring of an Aleister Crowley so-called working ceremony, satanic sex ritual. She looks spitting image of Crowley. Their 3-year-old toddler died. Another drowning incident. Let's see here. Lou Costello. I'm just throwing him in there because I hadn't had on the list. His toddler child died. Drowning incident. The classic of 1940s comedian Adam Costello. Lou Costello's toddler died in a pool. Sage Moonblood Stallone, who Hawkeye thinks was a girl made into a boy. Jet Travolta, the son of John Travolta. Enos Cosby, the son of comedian Bill Cosby. Granger Smith. I don't know who Granger Smith is. What am I missing? I don't know who Granger Smith is. Who else lost? Johnny Carson's son Richard died in a car accident. Some of this stuff is obviously you can't really say foul play or sacrifice or something, but these odd circumstances. I mean, how often do you have a personal experience of someone that lost a child? To me, it's been very rare, but of course you can't use personal experience.
The other end, Johnny. There's also, it seems to be lots of celebrities have mothers die when their mothers aren't like old by me.
Sure.
It's like Kanye West's mom died when she was like 50, and Bruno Mars's mother also died in a similar way. And Kanye West and Bruno Mars are like mega stars, like all over the radio.
Mike Tyson's 4-year-old daughter Exodus died of quote accidental asphyxiation. Whoa, there's a big one there. Charlie Chaplin's first child, Norman. Hang on, George, real quick. Charlie Chaplin's son, Norman, died. Now he died at the age of 42 of a blood clot. No, that doesn't really count. Of course, the Lindbergh baby that many people feel was sacrificed by the Lindbergh family. Paul Newman's son, Scott, drug overdose. Marie Osmond's son, Michael, committed suicide. Keanu Reeves' girlfriend gave birth to a stillborn daughter, and then she died in a car accident. Now, there's George. There's a big one right there. That's something crazy, creepy.
Keanu Reeves dressed as a Jesuit, as Neo.
Should we bring in wives? Liam Neeson's wife died in a quirky skiing accident. Sonny Bono died in a quirky skiing accident. Mary Tyler Moore's only son Richard died at 24 of accidental gunshot. I guess he was handling a gun and shot himself. Accidentally shot him. Jerry Lewis' son died of drug overdose. Marlon Brando's daughter died, hanged herself. Half brother Christian died to complications of pneumonia. Rob Delaney. Do I know Rob Delaney? 2.5-year-old son Henry died Toddler death, very suspicious. Anna Nicole Smith, she died, and her son died as well. That's all definitely suspicious. Guaranteed foul
Well,
play.
actually, we mentioned Kurt Cobain. What was her? Who was his girlfriend? Courtney Love.
It's huge. Courtney Love. As a matter of fact,
She's on the Epstein list, right?
yes, good for you. And Kurt Cobain died on or about the birthday of Francis, the original Francis Xavier.
Actually, I'm pretty sure the Rwanda genocide also took place on the birthday.
Yes, that was a Hawkeye. Great find, Hawkeye, to remind us of that. What an interesting, and there's some weird stuff about Cobain's death too. And he was found 3 days later, and did he shoot himself? Was it a drug overdose? He tried to kill himself previously, and it's just a lot of weird stuff.
Actually, have you heard the term the 27 Club? I'm pretty sure that originates with Cobain, but if you type that in, a bunch of stuff will come up. But there's been a bunch of celebrities who have died at 27 years old.
Oh my goodness!
I think they credit Kurt Cobain as like the initiator of that.
I forgot about this. I forgot about Joe Biden's wife and daughter dying in a car accident.
And of course, there was Jackie Spire, whose husband died in a car crash about 30 years ago.
Yes, the only witness, one of the few living witnesses to Jonestown. Good little
Catholic. And according to Jackie Spire, the CIA had nothing to do with Jonestown.
Nothing to do with it. Mia Farrow, who's married to that pig, Woody Allen, who married so of the children they had, 2 of them died, and the third one got married to her stepfather, her surrogate father. Oh, and don't forget Ronan. Don't forget Ronan Farrow. Ronan Farrow, who is probably the son, the love child of Frank Sinatra, who was also gay. Probably because he was abused as a child as well. So Mia Farrow, good Catholic girl who married a Jew, and just a road rash of evil done to the children that they brought into that family. A road rash of evil. We can't. If we're going to talk about that, we'll talk about the Anderson Pooper and the Vanderbilts and his brother who committed suicide, and he turned up to be homosexual. Because I'm sure the Vanderbilts, Gloria and the rest of them, they didn't. There wasn't any abuse of those kids, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's so many names where you can't just dismiss it. There's some sacrificial rites going on. Blavatsky, accused the Jesuits of being the biggest black magicians on the earth. They're very well versed into the occult, for instance. All the Jesuits, I'm sure, have read. If you know the scholar Alexius Lévy, who's a prominent French Roman Catholic occultist of the 18th century. The Jesuits are well versed in the occult. They do. They're into the ritualistic sacrifices. Invocations. They study the Kabbalah, for instance. As Blavatsky said, they're sorcerers, and there's so many, literally every single celebrity has this happen to them. Recently, Rihanna had a younger cousin die in Barbados, kind of another suspicious death, but a younger cousin of Rihanna died.
And I can't help but think, George, you want to get in, George. I apologize for continue to cut you off. I can't help but think that some of these are favors. I wonder if Liam Neeson didn't find out that his wife was cheating on him and then asked for a favor, and boom, she has an accident. The thought crossed my mind. I have no evidence to that, but just it's very suspicious. I mean, who the hell dies in a skiing accident? How fast do you have to hit a fucking, pardon my language, how fast do you have to hit a fucking tree to die in a skiing accident? Are you kidding me?
Ask Sonny Bono. Well, I mean, I guess you can't.
Yeah, Sonny Bono. Thing happened to him.
Oh, well, I know on that line, the official story, if that was, that actually, I've skied where that event supposedly took place. That was at Mont Tremblant in Quebec, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Montreal. But the official story, I think, was she wasn't wearing a helmet. So, I guess that is convenient for them. That she could say, wearing a helmet. Get a pack of Liam Neeson's wife supposedly wasn't wearing a helmet when skiing. So, It is
What are you doing that you
very
have to help?
convenient to prop that official storyline. Just like,
Hold
it was super convenient for Mac Miller dying of an overdose because he, rapped about drugs all the time in his music.
What was the other one that? Jet Travolta died in like the Bahamas, right? Supposedly had a seizure. What a perfect way if you want to sacrifice a child is to go for some podunk law enforcement out in the middle of nowhere and then claim seizure, and all of a sudden, hey, did you know that this child actually had a history of seizures? I didn't know. Well, yeah, we just found that out. Are you kidding me? So you're in
that would do it if you could seal it
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah, you're in a podunk little nation, and you just so happen to have the child have a seizure at that point, and the investigation is a joke, because you're in wherever, Barbados, the Bahamas, or wherever.
Okay, excuse me. You want to know about a sacrifice? I know we've talked about this more than once, but I want to give something a little bit more definitive. We were talking a couple weeks ago about the so-called appearance of Our Lady or Their Lady at Fatima in Portugal. This is the official count. I'll just try to be as quick as possible. The miracle, or the alleged miracle, between May and October 19.
Go ahead.
Lucia, her cousins Jacinta and Francisco Barto reported visions of a luminous lady believed to be the Virgin Mary. She appeared to the children in Cova de Ira Fields, I guess outside of the hamlet of Alojustro near Fatima. Okay, I don't speak Portuguese, so forgive me. She appeared 13th of each month at approximately noon for 6 straight months. Did you catch that? Or she appeared to them day of each month at approximately noon for 6. The only exception was August, when the children were a local administrator. Now, as I said, these are children, minors. Lucia describes seeing the lady as, quote, brighter than the sun, rays of light, clearer than any crystal filled, quote. According to Lucia's account, the lady confided to the children 3 secrets, known as the 3 secrets of Fatima. She urged the children to do penance and to make sacrifices to save sinners. The children wore tight cords around their waists to cause pain, abstained from drinking water on hot days, and performed other works of penance. Most important, Lucia said the lady asked them to say the rosary every day, reiterating many times that the rosary was a key to their personal world peace. Many young Portuguese men, including relatives of the visionaries, were fighting World War I at the time. Our Lady explained to the children that the war is a punishment for sin, and war God would no longer castigate the world would further castigate the world for the disobedience to His will by means of war, hunger, persecution of the Church and the Holy Father and the Catholic faithful. God's mother prophesied that Russia would be God's chosen, quote, instrument of chastisement, end quote, for spreading, quote, errors, end quote, atheism and materialism across the earth, fomenting
Hey,
wars.
George, pause real quick. This is real quick. I want to highlight something you mentioned. This is part of the false religion of Roman Catholicism that taps into the Isis, Semiramis, Astarte cults. There is no such thing as God's mother. There is a blessed woman, according to what we Christians believe. Miriam was the vessel for the incarnation of Jesus, of the Son of God in human form. There is no such thing as the mother of God. God does not have a mother. That's part of the Catholic twisting, intermingling, syncretism of ancient pagan, demonic mother and infant worship. And by doing that, you according to what real Christians believe, you can actually have a much higher risk of missing the whole purpose of Christianity, which is basically love Jesus, go to heaven. By having a relationship with Jesus, you cannot have a relationship with an infant in mother's arms. You cannot have a relationship with an infant.
Oh, yes, I understand. I'm not advocating this. I'm just simply recounting what the official narrative was.
George, I'm not criticizing you. I'm underlining and highlighting what you read. They characterize Mary as the mother of God. That is not Christian doctrine, and I just wanted to highlight what you mentioned as part of this Catholic narrative. Please continue. I apologize for throwing you off.
Okay, but we're talking about sacrifice here, and of course, well, Eric. Okay, I know Eric may disagree with me, but this is completely satanic. But that's another conversation. Okay, I'll just finish this out. In her appearances at Fatima, the Blessed Mother repeatedly emphasized the necessity of praying the Rosary daily, of wearing the brown scapular of Mount Carmel, and performing acts of reparation and sacrifice to prevent the terrible chastisement at the hands of Russia and to convert, quote, that poor nation, end quote. Our Lady requested solemn publication of the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart by the Pope and the Catholic bishops of the world. She also asked that the faithful practice a new devotion of reparation on the first Sunday of 5 consecutive months, the quote, 5 first Saturdays, end quote. Thousands of people flocked to Fatima and to Arahustra in the months following the reports of the visions and miracles. On August the 13th, 1970, the provincial administrator and anti-clerical Freemason Arthur Santos, no relations, believing the events were politically disruptive, arrested the children before they could reach Cova de Iria that day. Prisoners were held with them in the provincial jail. Later testified children were very upset and were consoled by inmates and led the inmates in saying the Rosary. The administrator interrogated the children and unsuccessfully attempted to get them to divulge the contents of the secrets. In the process, he tried to convince the children that he would boil them one by one in a pot of oil unless they confessed their secrets. The children, however, resisted. That month, instead of the usual apparition of Cova de Iria, I believe that means the Cove of Peace. On the 13th, the children reported that they saw the lady on August the 19th, nearby Bellejos. I wish Felipe were on the show with us. But the heart of Our Lady's message to the world is contained in what would be called the, quote, secret, end quote, which he confided to the 3 children seers on July 20, 1917. The secret actually consists of 3 parts, the first 2 of which would have been publicly revealed. The first part of the secret was a horrifying vision of hell, quote, where all souls of the poor sinners go, end quote, and contained an urgent plea from Our Lady for acts of prayer and sacrifice to save souls. The second part of the secret specifically prophesies the outbreak of World War II and contained the Mother of God's solemn request for the consecration of Russia as a condition for world peace. It also predicted the inevitable triumph of her Immaculate Heart following Russia's consecration and conversion of, quote, of that poor nation, end quote, to the Catholic faith. The last part of the secret is known as, quote, the third secret, end quote, was written down in 1944 in a letter by Lucia de Santos, the last surviving Fatima seer. It was placed in the care of the Holy See with instructions that it would not be opened until 1960. Most informed sources speculate that the portion of the secret concerns chaos in the Catholic Church, predicting widespread apostasy, a loss of faith beginning in the 1970s. However, it is now believed that it predicted 1981 with the assassination attempt of Pope John Paul II. Fatima now attracts thousands of pilgrims from all over the world, particularly the pilgrimages in the days in May and October. The large torchlight processions in the evening are particularly impressive, even often being led by cardinals and bishops. The pilgrims gather in Cova de Iria, Cova of the Peace, in the enormous plaza where the little chapel was built and where the Virgin Mary is believed to have appeared to the children. Around the plaza are a considerable number of shops and stalls selling various religious articles. On the far side of the plaza rises the Great Basilica, built in the neoclassical style, in the central tower, 65 meters high. The construction of which was begun on the 13th of May, 1928. It is flanked by colonnades linking the extensive convent and hospital buildings. In the basilicas are the tombs of two of the three visionaries. Siblings Francisco and Juanita died in 1919 and 1920, respectively. They were beatified in 1970. The third
George,
seal,
real quick,
Lucia
George, real quick. I want to mention Fatima. First of all, the purpose of this occurring in a town that just so happens to be the name of Muhammad's favorite daughter is meant to link this, make Muslims feel warm towards this so-called miracle. That's number one. Number two, October 13th, 1917 is the 610th anniversary of the suppression of the Templars on October 13th, unlucky Friday in 1307. And by using this nomenclature and this ideology of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, it's part of this cult of disconnecting Catholics from Christian doctrine that could save their souls. This is also the disembodiment of Jesus Christ, the immaculate hands of Jesus, the immaculate heart of Jesus, the immaculate eyes of Jesus, the immaculate feet of Jesus. What this does is it stops you from having a relationship. But by Christian doctrine, what you need is a living relationship with Jesus Christ. Talk to Jesus Christ like he's your friend. You can't do that if you're talking to his heart or his hands or his feet or his eyes. It's part of the Catholic cult that is ancient paganism. Ancient paganism. And I just wanted to accent some of your narrative there so that people don't get lost. If you read too much, people can get lost. Can you remember can you pick up where you left off and let's wrap this up so that you guys can get going.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for I maybe went a little bit long, which I'm wanting to do. Okay. I shared that because you're talking about child sacrifice. Did you catch the last sentence? This was supposed to have happened in 1917. By 1920, two of the three witnesses were dead. The two, Francisco and his sister. Lucia died in 2005. She actually, what they didn't say, and which I did say, she actually went on to become a nun. She didn't quite pull a Tina Mucklow.
Yeah, we talked about this last. Yes, excellent connection. I absolutely agree with why you would connect it with child sacrifice. As a matter of fact, I think it's a brilliant connection. And what we mentioned last time, that Eric pointed out, is that what's the name of that ex-priest author, Dijkstra?
Doiswick.
Doiswick, who very attentively mentioned how punishment for clergy that won't toe the line, if there's a member of clergy that has a pang of conscience when they're doing something wrong for the Catholic Church, they get disappeared in a cloister or a convent, which, by the way, we found out you have diplomatic immunity from. That's why. What's that? What's Mucklemeyer, whatever that woman's name, the stewardess, the only woman to see who D.B. Cooper was, ran to a convent because she had diplomatic immunity. There was no way that she could be prosecuted for committing a crime there.
You're assuming
real quick. Go ahead, George.
Well, we're assuming. I mean, I believe she's still alive. She's only about 70 years old. So.
Hey, George, here's another question. I forget. I can't believe I didn't talk to you about this and didn't ask you this question. I know we got to get going. Where did D.B. Cooper, Dan Cooper, who was misnamed D.B. Cooper by the media, where did he get his money? He's not a bank robber. He's an extortionist. Why do we not know who he kidnapped and who he extorted for the $200,000?
Oh no. Okay. Thing is, okay. Something I probably should have sent you the whole story. What it was is back in November 1971. November. This was Thanksgiving weekend. Our Thanksgiving in America, for those who are listening outside of the United States, is on the fourth Thursday of November. The day before, Wednesday the 24th, we bought an airline ticket from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. It was supposed to be a one-way ticket, $25 at the time. And while he was in the plane, now the flight was only supposed to take maybe half an hour or so because it's not a huge.
It was the bomb threat, and he
Yeah.
demanded money to not set the bomb off.
Yes. So there were
Okay.
probably less than 40 people on the plane, including the crew. You have the pilot, the co-pilot,
Who
maybe
paid
three or
them?
yes. So they all
They landed. What authority paid him the $200,000? George, do you know?
well, okay, I'm not exactly okay. He demanded the plane be landed in SeaTac, Seattle, Tacoma, and it was supposed to fly to Mexico City. But they had to do another layover. They were supposed to do a layover in SFO, San Francisco, to be refueled. But
George, are there any Jesuits in Seattle? Just
well,
a couple.
probably
Are there
more than you
Jesuits
should.
are there any Jesuits?
The high priest of Seattle is like Stephen Spendenberg, the president of Jesuit Seattle University. He's a
Okay.
powerful Jesuit, and you know that Ed Murray, the former
The pedophile
pedophile mayor.
mayor eventually replaced by another homosexual. What's her name, George? Jane something or other.
Oh, I'm drawing a blank. I could go look it up, but yeah.
I don't want to throw you off real quick.
Ed Murray was the people don't. You covered this before, but I haven't detailed this much on my channel. But yeah, the Seattle mayor was a Jesuit seminarian, or he went to a Jesuit seminary.
Adopted a little boy to rape him with his lover, his married lover.
Yeah. So
real quick, let me let you continue so we can get out of here. But you know what this reminds me of? The Lockerbie plane that blew up over Scotland. Where did it pick up the bomb? On its holdover in Malta. On its holdover in Malta. The Lockerbie flight picked up its bomb on its holdover in Malta.
Oh, well, there you go. That's convenient.
I
was talking to George last night. I joked around that I think Cooper probably flew straight to the Jesuit retreat house when he got to Mexico.
Jenny Durkin, by the way, was the female homosexual that eventually replaced the Jesuit seminarian child predator scumbag.
Well, not to blame. Okay, we're talking about Fatima. Okay, so 2 of the 3 alleged victims were dead within 3 years by 1920. So the third alleged witness was hoisted. She became a nun. So she was able to. They didn't have to kill her. They just basically were able to, because how should I put this? It was a hoax. I'd have to say the Jesuits probably concocted this.
Oh,
because they're giving you.
I finally found this quote here. I really want to just kind of keep going. But I'll just be quick. This is from Are you guys familiar with the book 14 Years a Jesuit by Count Paul von Heusbruck? He was,
I've heard because of you, yeah.
Yeah, he's the German Jesuit. This is a great book, but he writes here on page 164 that the actual founders of the Marian congregations were Jesuits, and he gives their names. This is what I want to mention. It was Sebastian Cabarassi and John Leone, both who were teachers at the College of the Syracuse and afterwards at Rome, who had between 1560 and 1563 formed a community of their pupils, quote, for the special adoration of the Holy Virgin. And so you see the Jesuits, created these Marian congregations, and this Heusbruck shows how the Jesuits, put Mary above Jesus. And, if you know the history of the Vatican 1870 Council, that becomes very clear. But that's, I just wanted to mention that, George, if you wanted to
Ancient paganism. George, before you go, let me before you get going, let me mention. I forgot to put this up. Both Jenny Durkin and Ed Murray, homosexual, far left Roman Catholics, and of course, as Eric mentioned, and nobody knows that Ed Murray is a Jesuit seminarian, almost Jesuit priest. We found that for you. Finish up, George, so we can let everybody go. Good grief, this is a mega blockbuster. We're going like.
Okay,
Over 3 hours.
So they're basically giving you, the Jesuits were giving their blueprint for the remainder of the 20th century. They're basically saying, you know what, we want to punish those heretic Russian Orthodox and other Orthodox in Greece, Bulgaria, places like that. And of course, and we're going to sacrifice, we're basically going to murder 2 children to promulgate this message. Because this little girl, it will basically silence the third one by making her become a nun. And so they're just saying that, get ready. This is in 1917. World War I was already going on for 3 years. And this is just, they're basically saying this is simply a warm up for what we're going to be doing for the next several decades. So get used to it. We're going to destroy Russia. We're going to destroy Eastern Europe. We're going to destroy the Middle East.
Well, they acted accordingly. They put a Roman Catholic, Dzerzhinsky, who wanted to be a Jesuit, as the head of the secret police. And Lenin put the monument up to Sir Thomas More, on cue with the Vision of Fatima.
Listen, Eric, we should not mock the rosary. The rosary, praying the rosary can protect you from an atomic bomb. You found that out.
Yeah, it did. The Jesuits, they were literally only like a mile or two away from
the Jesuits in Hiroshima were the rosary, protected by the rosary when the atomic bombs were dropped. Had nothing to do with whether or not they were actually there, fully knowing and understanding and planting weapons of mass destruction to punish the heretic population of Japan. Nothing to do with that at all.
Dude, why isn't that on like an episode of MythBusters is filmed in San Francisco, so that's why. But why haven't they done MythBusters on that? Like that's one of the most outrageous. Like it's impossible. No one can survive a nuclear blast if you're standing within you'll be disintegrated. Like there'll be nothing of you. Like
their cathedral remains standing too.
Yeah. That was incredible. Just like in Frankfurt, their cathedral remained standing there also when the Allies were carpet bombing the city. Unbelievable. And I'll wrap it up with this just because I know we got to get going, but just to tie it all into some of the celebrity sacrifices in the music and actors we were talking about. We probably listed like 30, 40 of them, but I found here Ahmet Udegrin, the guy who founded Atlantic Records. This guy signed, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, Phil Collins. I don't know if this guy signed the Rolling Stones, but Udegrin, he signed all sorts of people. You're talking Otis Redding, Solomon Burke, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, the Rascals. But I found out though, and Ahmet Udegrin, the founder of Atlantic Records, which is still to this day probably the most powerful label in hip hop. He went to Jesuit Georgetown, but it came out in 2017. This woman here, Dorothy Carvello, I guess she was an executive. She alleges that Ahmet Udegrin tried to remove her underwear, and that Udegrin groped her under her shirt at a public event in 1987. And her book called "Anything for a Hit" tells of her experiences. So apparently, Udegrin was sexually harassing people while he was at Atlantic Records.
Which
I guess is you would kind of expect that with all the evidence that we've put out.
That's the Turk, right? He's Turkish.
Yeah, he's the Jesuit trained Turk.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had some powerful friends. He what did he here? He attended the Rolling Stones concert in 2006 with Bill Clinton, for instance. It says here he attends. Udegrin also encourages he's part of the society. What do you see here? American Turkish Society. He's on the board with Henry Kissinger, William Clay Ford, and Turgut Özal, former president.
Henry Kissinger, one of the visitors to Epstein's orgy island.
Absolutely, yeah. So it all it all ties in, and I guess I'll wrap this up for food for thought, just because I guess on the Catholic Church, this is from the ex-priest Doiswick. I think this is good food for thought because I covered on a previous video. I read what Emperor Frederick II said of the papacy, but I think it's interesting to see what like I'm going to read to you. Just this will just be a minute, and then I'll be quiet here and let you guys wrap up. But it's interesting to see what these are canonized saints of the church, and like they ripped the Pope. Called him like the Antichrist. But this is Saint Bridget of Sweden, and like this is stuff that just the church just tries to bury, I assume. But Saint Bridget of Sweden, as Doiswick says, she's an inspired prophetess, and he quotes the breviary. She warns the world that the Antichrist is among us, and in a vision to God instructed her to tell the Pope that, quote, "You are truly a murderer of souls. You are worse than Lucifer. You are more unjust than Pilate. You are more cruel than Judas. Your papal throne," or she says, "your throne shall be thrown down like a heavy stone which does not come to rest until it reaches the lowest depth of hell." That's like that's a saint of the church saying that, and that's from her book Revelations, book 1, chapter 41. Then Saint Catherine of Siena, canonized saint. There's a Saint Catherine of Siena school near my parents' place in London. The Saint Catherine of Siena, an inspired prophetess, calls the Roman hierarchy, quote, "demons of hell," and, quote, "vendors of divine grace," quote, "who cared for nothing else than pleasures and estates." End quote.
Catherine of Siena is. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but Catherine of Siena is the Opus Dei Church in Washington D.C. that Robert Hanson and a bunch of the Supreme Court justices, they all, and I think I'm sure Louis Frigo went there too. Catherine of Siena
great information. I didn't know that was the Opus Dei Church. Yeah, they showed that like that's it's interesting, and that was in her book Caterina, the Epistle 41, Volume 1, page 253, and it's the last canonized saint that ripped the church was Saint Vincent Ferrer. He died in 1419. Doiswick says, as a canonized saint, he described the Roman hierarchy as follows, quote, "They are vain and arrogant, courtiers, lovers of the fine living and pompous display, and much given to usury. They make their faith subservient to schemes of worldly wealth and ambition, and entirely neglect the care of their churches. But they visit the great ones of the world and the wealthy, but seldom the poor and the lowly. They have neither simplicity, love God, nor chastity. In short, their entire life is one interrupted scandal." And that's from a canonized saint, Saint Vincent Ferrer. I'll wrap it up there, but that's this is stuff that like their own quote heroes in the church have spoke that. And we mentioned Frederick the Great, or Emperor Frederick II called the Pope the Great Dragon. For instance.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes. Holy Roman Emperor Frederick. Yeah, that's just a brilliant study. Here he is, the guy that supposedly, you're a better Christian than many Christians I know. Bring up what a great study it would be. Prominent Catholics who called the office of the papacy Antichrist. Absolutely biblical. Sounds like something Martin Luther has said, which he did. Many of the protesters and reformers called the office, it was the office of the Pope, the office of the papacy is Antichrist. In Matthew 24, Jesus said, "Many will come in my name, and me you won't pay attention to, but many will come in my name, and then you will believe." All of these people that supposedly were the Antichrist, Adolf Hitler, Pol Pot, good little Roman Catholic, Adolf Hitler, good little Roman Catholic, Stalin, Jesuit seminary and Roman Catholic, all these supposed Napoleon, good little Roman Catholic, with a Catholic priest whispering in his ear, brought up on the island of Corsica that the Jesuits ran to after their supposed suppression. None of these people claim to be Jesus Christ. Every pope that sits on the throne of Peter and speaks so-called ex cathedra writes in capital plural pronouns, equating himself with God. Nobody fits this concept of Antichrist better than every pope that's ever lived.
What earthly ruler even comes close to the power that the Pope yields? There's nothing. There's no one even in his stratosphere of he's immune from all civil law.
Revelation 17:18. You have to drink of the cup of her fornication in order to be empowered. You have to go to the great harlot in order to be empowered. And that is exactly what the Catholic Church has always done to this very day. Our current pedophile president and best buddies with Jeffrey Epstein spent 2 years under the Jesuits at Fordham and sent all his kids to Jesuit school. She is the great power that you must.
His sister even gave literally no one talks about this in like the media, but Donald Trump's sister literally gave millions to the Jesuits, and she literally said the Jesuits, like, I credit them for saving my life. That's on the churchmilitant.com. Like, are you kidding me? Like, so
His sister's a judge.
Like, look at
$4 or $5 million.
Was there? Yeah, it was $4 or $5 million. Yeah. I was just saying, like, as you mentioned, people need to, the fact that Trump's doing this and people close to him are doing this, you need to like look yourself in the mirror if you still think that, you know, he's riding out, coming in on the white horse. You know, we're just, you know, it's just those Democrats are making it, and the deep state's making it tough for him. You know, you got to like rethink things if that's your mindset.
Trump was repeatedly sued by a woman who said he raped her at an Epstein party. And she was bullied. She was bullied out of her suit in California, brought it back up in New York, and bullied out of that too, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's the pattern. And you know, Trump was neighbors with Epstein. We read the quote earlier on the show. He said he was a great guy, just like how, you know, Rudy Giuliani, good Italian Catholic, or he's Catholic. Rudy Giuliani the sex abuse scandal at, what is it, West Point, the Army.
Yes, the satanic part of the Satanic Panic, where they were raping the children of soldiers at West Point, and good old Rudy Giuliani made sure that no one was prosecuted. Good little gatekeeper that he was, proved that he was a good little gatekeeper, so they gave him New York City on 9/11. Just like Alex Acosta was given Secretary of Labor to oversee the child trafficking laws that aren't getting enforced on Trump's watch. Wake up, people.
Well, and Acosta, speaking at the Catholic University of America, but if they do decide to take down Epstein, he'll be ensuring that it'll just be, you know, it's the fall guy taking the hit for this. Like, Acosta will make sure no one of serious significance, you know, besides the Jew Epstein, goes down for this.
Yep, and that's the greatest spot. The greatest spot to stop is that anybody that's excited over this, anybody that's, see that Trump's going after him, that's Trump's buddy. Epstein is a Jew fall guy and nothing more. Nothing more. Okay. And I would be surprised. Go ahead, George. Let's finish up. Nothing. I'd be surprised if this, even though he's up.
Okay, so this is basically like a Nuremberg trial light. They only. Something like over 100 men were tried in Nuremberg, or were supposed to be tried. Almost all of them got
Nuremberg trial, George, that Father Edmund Walsh was there to make sure that the proper records got redacted so that all the crimes of the Catholic Church would never show up.
Or they got redacted, or they got disappeared. So anyhow, something like over 100 men were tried in the various trials. Most of them were acquitted or got light sentences in years. Something like a dozen or so. They're probably Lutheran, with the exception of like Haas. He was a good Catholic. Almost all neo Nazis got away. They ended up in South America or America.
Like now, they made sure to tie up the loose ends with the Jesuit Bernard Stample.
Yes. Okay. So regarding Jeff Epstein, he might get 5 or 10 years at a federal prison where he'll have like access to a sauna, to a pool.
Right. Oh yeah, actually, just really mention, George. That's actually a thing in the U.S. You can actually pay. It's like 100. There's the Channel Police State USA covered this. There's a prison where you can pay like a $200 extra a night, and you get like a TV, you know, kind of like a couch, like a spacious living area. A privilege for the elite. That's just what I wanted to mention.
And of course, it may not be 5-star accommodations, but you have access to like a golf course, things like that. And So federal prison, if you're an elite, is almost a joke. It's like a long weekend. So anyhow, so I try to over the last couple of years, I've tried to disabuse people on why it was a bad idea to. Oh, okay, it's one thing to make a mistake in voting for Trump in 2016, but it's another thing to be fully intend to vote for him next year. And they keep saying, "Well, did you want Hitler to win?" No.
Yeah, no,
However,
George, I would put it this way. I would put it this way, George. It's not an issue of voting for Trump. It doesn't matter. They have it locked up. They have it sewn up. It's a matter of um, is Trump a white knight? Is Trump going to actually do anything? Absolutely not. He's a pig. He's a puppet pig who has done the same crimes that they have all done, which is why you're not going to come anywhere close to sitting in power in the Father Andrew White S.J. House unless you are thoroughly and absolutely owned deviant. In the case of Barack Obama, he's not so much as much of a predator as he was abused himself, and so he was thoroughly owned. His wife was a transsexual. We mentioned this in the chat. How Joan Rivers had her accident, her dentist accident in the dentist chair after admitting that Michelle's a tranny. He's thoroughly that poor guy. I can't believe I have said some of the vehement things I said about Barack Obama, not fully understanding as a conservator that I was, not understanding that the guy is just an absolute mind control puppet. He couldn't sit in front of a sixth grade classroom without teleprompters, George. And unfortunately, Trump is even far worse. Trump is just a pig. Trump is an absolute pig. The fact that he is on record, he's on audio as having said, when you're famous, you can grab a woman in the blank and they will let you. Are you kidding me? This pig, this is the president of the United States. And there are conservatives, there are Christian conservatives who act like this guy is the greatest thing, acts like this guy is an outsider, acts like this guy is going to, anybody that is familiar with the child trafficking problem and claims that Donald Trump is actually there to help is a moron. Any Q-tard that says that Donald Trump is going to drain the swamp and not that Donald Trump is part of the swamp, you're an idiot. The vast majority of your trolls anyway, that you don't even believe what you say. But if you do,
Donald Trump. Right now we're experiencing a record amount of Jesuit-trained officials in high positions of the U.S. government. Just one here. This was I put this together just on my post. There's been 3 consecutive Jesuit-trained puppets as the executive secretary of the National Security Council. The current one, Joan Virginia O'Hara, Donald Trump announced her in November 16th, 2018. She's taken over the secretary position. She went to Loyola College in Maryland. Look at all of Trump's appointments. Everyone he's appointed literally is a Jesuit puppet. Like the guy in charge of the Federal Reserve that Trump appointed, Jerome Powell, went to Georgetown. Everything about Trump, is Jesuit puppet. It screams it. Even when he was running for his campaign, his 2 campaign managers, Paul Manafort and Steve Bannon, went to Jesuit Georgetown. The Boris Epstein, supposed Jew that's controlling Donald Trump, his economic advisor, went to Jesuit Georgetown. His current chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, went to Jesuit Georgetown. He was Trump appointed him Jesuit-trained Mulvaney before that as the head of the United States budget. And Mulvaney came out recently, headline in the Daily Caller, I have it on my blog, saying that Catholicism is driving policy in Trump's administration. Everything about Trump, is Jesuit. The Kristen Nielsen, his longtime, she recently stepped down, but his head of Homeland Security for his first 3 years, Jesuit trained at Georgetown. Lee Cisna, he just stepped down, but the head of the U.S. Immigration Department, Jesuit trained at Georgetown. The guy who replaced him is Jesuit trained at Gonzaga College. I think it's Arizona or Virginia Attorney General Succinelli. It's literally a record amount of his 2 Supreme Court picks both went to Jesuit Georgetown Prep. Are you kidding me? It's
Eric, if you say Roman Catholic or Jesuit trained or Goldman Sachs or Jew. You have absolutely everyone remotely involved with Donald Trump. And that fits the paradigm. That fits what we call Jesuit breadcrumbs. And as far as Jews go, they are patsy. Behind every Jew is a
There's no real Jews in power in Trump's administration. It's
wait.
there was an
According
article
to
in the
Huffington
Catholic
Post,
the National Catholic Register ran an article titled "Trump's Catholic Warriors," and they're like, "Oh, a new pattern has emerged in the Trump administration where all of his top officials seem to be of the Roman Catholic faith."
And now we're wrong, Eric. We're wrong. According to the Huffington Post, Jared Kushner secretly controls it all from behind the scenes. Remember that? Jared Kushner controls it all, according to the Huffington Post.
Jared Kushner, yeah, he's yeah, there was also who else? Didn't the Washington Post also run a story kind of like that too?
Yeah, Ivanka's beard. Ivanka needs a phony husband while she's having sex with her father.
Yeah, like they've insinuated that.
Look up Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump, inappropriate. Look up pictures, look up audio, look up video, and you will see everything you need to know about how you become president of the United States. Trumpettes, wake up.
Yeah, like it's this. I hope this is like a kind of cold water to the face of Trumpettes if they're watching. Trump signed an executive order re-putting the 1033 program into place. So now the police departments, are presumed getting heavy armored equipment, from Iraq and Afghanistan, MRAPs, Bearcats, Bradleys, assault rifles, Kevlar helmets, bayonets. There's been like 50,000 bayonets given out. Like, what are cops doing with bayonets? Like,
the same thing they're doing with camouflage. There is no reason for a cop to wear camouflage. It doesn't even work. It doesn't even have a function. The function is to train citizens to being under the heel of a standing military, which is against posse combat.
Absolutely. Actually, I just thought this. Trump is literally such a police state advocate. There was actually this was in the Oval Office. There was a Texas police officer saying to Trump, if you just type it, I'll describe this after, but or I'll tell you what to type in after. But this Texas police sheriff, county sheriff, was speaking to Trump, saying, "Hey, Trump, there's this guy in my county who wants to get rid of civil asset forfeiture." And Trump's like, "Well, do you want me to ruin his career right now? Like, I can get rid of him, like, on the spot." And civil asset forfeiture is so criminal. Like, people are getting their life savings stolen from them. Like, the cops, there's the USA Today YouTube channel actually like 3 weeks ago covered there's this teenager who was driving from like Illinois to California to like visit some family. He brought his $13,000 savings for the last 2 years with him in cash, and the cops pulled him over. He asked to search his car. He said yes, and they took the money. Because with this was under like Reagan with the drug war laws. The cops can take money in your car if they can suspect it of being drug money, and you actually have to prove 100% definitively that it's not drug money, which is harder to do than you think. So that often they just take everyone's stuff. Like, they impound people's cars, impound people's houses. 80% of these civil asset forfeiture cases don't result in convictions. So it's just literally one of the biggest rackets currently in the police state. And Trump literally said to this Texas cop, "Yeah, I'll ruin this guy's career who's making a fuss about civil asset forfeitures." Like this, like that's like, like, are you kidding me? Like you don't have those are the words of a fascist dictator. Trump has also said to the police. This was like a speech to the police union or like the fraternal order of the police. Now he was talking, I think, about MS-13. Gang members, but this is the way all dictators do. Is like how Hitler dehumanized the Jews and saying, yeah, we can be violent with the Jews. So like he's dehumanizing MS-13. He's telling the cops that you can be rough with these guys. If you want to put them in the car, like throw them hard into the car, like rough them around a bit. So he's everything about him just to me screams fascist dictator.
I am deeply concerned with their plans. Everybody say, "Oh, Trump's going to get thrown out by a Democrat." It doesn't. I'll tell you, I'm actually more concerned of what happens if he stays in office, because they will accomplish far more harm with a phony reptilian than they ever would with a demon rat, with the exception, of course, of how with Obama, Pelosi, and who was in the Senate? Was it Harry Reid running the Senate when they pulled off Obamacare, socialized medicine?
Yeah,
With that exception,
that went to the Supreme Court, and the what was the Chief Justice is a Catholic, John Roberts.
John Roberts, the conservative Roman Catholic Opus Dei John Roberts. So nope, nothing wrong with it. It stays.
His wife has a degree from Georgetown.
Yeah, what a surprise. I am actually far more worried than what they would do. The same way that with Bush, they could not pull off 9/11.
Yeah, they passed the Patriot Act under Bush. That was more deadly, I think, than anything Obama. Obama signed. So I guess he was 2008. One of the first things actually Obama did was he re-signed the Patriot Act, and I think he made it permanent. So that's pretty bad. But Bush, that Patriot Act is just really the death of American democracy. Like it's just like
they needed a reptilian in office to really do the serious harm, and so.
What did George actually? Do you know George Orwell, who wrote 1984, was like an anti-Catholic? I found this. I put this on my archive.org page. The journal article was called "George Orwell's Anti-Catholicism." But Orwell said that he would read like the Catholic periodicals and like all the various like Catholic papers because he said he wanted to quote study the enemy, which I thought was fascinating. So Big Brother, it was Orwell like modeling, Big Brother off like the Jesuit. He was aware of the Vatican entry. He called them the enemy. So he just 1984, just like a blueprint of the Jesuit world order. And what Orwell said, this was sinister, but I think Orwell said if you want to picture the future, picture like a steel-toed boot stomping on a human head forever or something like that.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. One of the reasons why he's still a household name, Eric Arthur Blair, is because he was also a far left Fabian socialist. So even though he was truthful about the problems of, and I've never heard of this, my curiosity is piqued. I'm going to look it up about the Catholic Church. He was still safe for them, as was Voltaire, who was one of their own, trained by them to conflate the crimes of Catholicism with being Christian, which neither are true.
And money's the water. Millions of Christians have died from, think of the Albigenses, the Waldenses.
Oh my goodness! It just brings us full circle, bro. It just brings us full circle on why the Pope is the Antichrist. No one more accurately fits the idea of being drunk on the blood of the saints, as it says in the Bible in Book of Revelation 17, just screams the Catholic Church. Revelation 17 screams the Catholic Church. Wake up, Christians, conservatives, wake up.
Actually, I'll say this my last warning to Trumpets. Just I'll be quiet here because I know we've been rambling on a bit, but I think it's October 20th, 2016. Donald Trump said at the Alfred E. Smith dinner that we need to be on guard for anti-Catholic bias.
Yeah.
And, I put a Donald Trump while he was running for election. I put this video on my channel. It's like 3 or 4 videos ago down my feed, but it was a video called Donald Trump's Message to Catholics. And he was all about, Catholics have contributed greatly to they've contributed, so much to the advancement of the United States. And he's like, my administration is going to work hand in hand with Catholics. And he even said this outrageous stuff that, previous governments have been tough on Catholics, and my administration won't be tough on them. Like, it was so outrageous, and people got to realize that he's a professional actor and just a puppet of the highest order. But I'll wrap it up there. I'll mute my mic if you guys want to.
No, I'll just underline what you said and stop there. The purpose, what is it? Epstein is a fall guy Jew who is a pervert, and at the top of the pedophile food chain is the Catholic Church, and that says everything you need to know. That tells you what you need to know. You want justice? Go after the Catholic Church.
George, I agree. Do you want any last words, George, before we sign off? He's got his mic there.
Is it muted?
Yeah, I think we've been going on for what a great show today. Tons of information. We've got like a whole book full of info on this brief.
Yeah, to your credit, brother. To your credit. Thanks for hosting. I'm going to repost it on my website. I'll try to take some time and add all the links that we talked about today.
Okay, great. And
Okay.
actually, just for my curiosity with the spelling, the Vatican priest who went from Boys Town to the UN, was it Monsignor Robert Hoff?
Hupp, H-U-P-P.
Oh, Hupp,
Hupp.
H-U-P-P. Okay.
H-U-P-P, Robert Hupp, who was the one who was controlling Boys Town, who was the president of Boys Town, overseeing them, who hired John DeCamp to be his mouthpiece to get him out of trouble, and was the United States government representative to the United States, to the United Nations on issues of children's safety. Unbelievable. Tells you, separation of church and state, guys, works like a charm.
You know, so that scenario I think speaks in 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
Circumstantial. Like you can't say that's just a coincidence. You just become a fool. But George, do you want to jump in before we sign off?
Come on, George, you got to get something for your fans before we're out of here.
Yes, all three of them, or maybe four of them, or however many I have. Okay.
Oh no, you got groupies, George. Don't.
You do have groupies. They contact me looking for you, George. You got groupies.
Okay, well, people with mental institutions and jails don't count. But anyhow, as I said this before, last February, just when Donald Trump was giving the State of the Union for this year, in the first 5 minutes of the spiel, you recognized three survivors of Omaha Beach. They're probably in their 90s. And he specifically said the Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight David Eisenhower, who would go on to become, I believe, the 34th President of the United States, called the Allied invasion of Normandy the launch of the Great Crusade into Europe. Most people who heard that were probably totally oblivious as to what Donald Trump meant by that. Yes, he was absolutely correct. It was a great crusade for the Vatican.
You mean Eisenhower?
Oh, yes, Dwight Eisenhower. Donald Trump was talking because he said...
yeah, I know you mentioned this, but I saw this documentation. Eisenhower coached the Catholic football team. People aren't aware. Shows how much I
think. Yes, because he had such tremendous experience. He had as much experience teaching football as he did being a leader. Never had a single command. Go ahead, George. Finish up.
So it'd be appropriate. Eisenhower died 50 years ago and presumably went to hell. So it seemed only apropos that one presidential puppet would praise another presidential papal puppet.
Good for you. Absolutely appropriate.
And he used the same word as George Bush. He referred to Eisenhower's crusade. Trump did, and Bush referred to the war on terrorism as a crusade. I think it's September 17th, 2001. He's like, this war on terror, it'll take a while. So those are like his exact words.
How many times do Protestant Christians use that terminology?
Well, I think only I think secret Jesuits posing as Protestants like Billy Graham do, but I think the average Protestant does it.
And Billy Graham's magazine that I shared with you guys that just did I'm gonna cry on my sleeve piece on the poor illegal immigrants who get the little babies that get drowned under daddy's arms. Max Lucado, who is supposedly just a scion of evangelical Christians, just carrying the flag for the Catholic Church on illegal immigration. Just absolutely outrageous, folks. Please wake up. Christians, conservatives, please wake up. You are owned. You don't even know your own Bibles. Guys, great job today.
Oh, great job, everyone. And you realize the Vatican, Pope Boniface said, for salvation's sake, everyone must be subject to the Pope. And, the papacy doesn't just, believe this. They don't just write all these, anti-democratic, bull after bull after bull condemning, freedom of thought, freedom of expression, every type of civil. They don't just do this for the sake of doing it. They act on their beliefs. Like these guys are professionals, if they will, at deception, at intrigue, at war, at insurgency. The Jesuits wrote the Sun Tzu manual, which is literally a blueprint for like a counterinsurgency.
Guys, thank you so much. Elliot, Mark, Joe, Kat, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. By the way, George, Joe loves you. Everybody in the chat loves you, man. So let's do this again soon. This is a marathon, one of the best ones we've ever done. Well done. Great job, guys.
Yeah, great job. Great job, Johnny. Great job, George. Fantastic information. I'm gonna
We lost me. We lost you. That's all right. We're almost out. I'm gonna reload up on my channel, guys. I got you back. Go ahead.
Okay.
Finish the thought. We got you back.
I was thinking, I think let's keep doing the good fight. No one else is
Absolutely.
out here doing this. It is what it is.
Good for you. Nobody comes out. Nobody comes out and who's talking about Jeffrey Epstein today? It was a single day on the New York Slimes and it's gone, disappeared. We came out, we spent 4 hours on the guy and named names out of his little black book, and we gave the hyperlink. I'm going to continue to hand out the hyperlink of all the rich and shameless who have been in his black book and almost certainly been his orgy island because of that.
Oh, fantastic! And hopefully we inspire some others to if not put videos out just in your daily life when you're talking to friends or
promote us. You don't even have to do your stuff; just promote us.
Yeah, they'll tell it direct people to our channels, or just you're talking to people, just bring up once you get informed with real information, names, places, and dates, it's empowering, and you can begin to tell like I've done this with my friends. I talk to when I'm hanging out with some friends, I'll bring some of the stuff up, and it's a way to plant seeds with others, and it's an effective way to get the information out. But
amen. Names, places, and dates. Nobody else gives them the way we do. George, close us out.
Okay, I have a couple of teasers for the next show, which I hope we can do as soon as possible. One is I want to talk about Rome's control of history and historians. It'll probably cover done before and add a couple new ones in terms of how what people find out, how people allegedly find out about the. We're talking about Trump vicariously, and his buddy Jeff Epstein. But I wanted to discuss what happened on the 4th of July here in the United States, how Trump decided to politicize the 4th of July by having this ridiculous, like, Pravda-type parade where he had a bunch of tanks in D.C., and he wanted to salute the military. Also, how he not only politicized the 4th of July, he had a boo-boo with a teleprompter. It was raining, and he was talking about how George Washington's forces liberated the airports from the British back during the American Revolutionary War. Yes, how the American Revolutionary Army liberated the airports from the British back in the late 18th century.
Well, they did, didn't they, George? I thought it was the airport. Or was the Air Force? I don't remember. Yeah.
So his detractors are partially correct. Yes, he is a buffoon. I mean, he just.
That's his job. Well done, George. Well done, Eric. You guys already pointed this out. What was some of the things? Where was Donald Trump a household name? He was a ham actor. There are high school kids in high school plays that have done a better job acting, and yet that was what he did. He was in that stupid TV show. He went on the World Wrestling Federation with that arch Catholic multi-millionaire Vince McMahon who shaved his head. He's an actor, and a bad one at that, and that's all they needed.
Really, for me, like when Johnny and George, when I was like 9 years old, like I was completely oblivious, to everything. I was just a kid. But like one Halloween, like this shows like Donald Trump is a celebrity. I always saw him on TV, so I literally went out as Donald Trump for Halloween.
Oh my
goodness! I was like 9 years old because he's literally like that. Just shows like he's a celebrity. He's an actor. Like people go out as celebrities and actors. Like when they're going trick or treating when they're kids, and like my costume, I had dollar bills all over my suit with his signature phrase was "You got fired." That was when he heard "You got fired." you heard Donald Trump. That was his signature line on the Apprentice show. But it's amazing how people just forget all of that. Like his whole history being like a talk show host. So.
Great story. So true. So true. Guys, he is folks in the audience, please wake up. We are going to give you names, places, and dates, and we're going to show you how to get real justice. We're not going to talk about the deep state. We're not going to talk about the Illuminati. We're not going to give you any. We're not going to talk about the Satanist. We're not going to give you any nebulous terms of that won't give you any results. We're going to show you how to get real results when you want to fight and resist. So stay tuned.
Oh, great way to I think we should wrap it up there. That's a great way to close off. Thanks everyone again for I see we got 20. I think we got 28 people in here right now. 20
Wow.
down to 23. Yeah, that's great number.
That's good.
And when I first started doing my YouTube channel, I never would have thought I would be up to like over 800 subscribers. So that's
Outstanding.
It's a very rewarding. It makes me want to keep on going. But we'll I'm sure we'll do another one shortly. For the viewers, stay tuned. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Don't do anything too crazy out there, everyone. And
okay.
we'll be back here in a few days.